Oh, there's something right in front of me. I'm sorry. I just said a little one. Almost ready. I'm just waiting for Jim to give me the sign that we're ready to recording, and we'll get going. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you all to the October 19, 2022 meeting of the City of Charleston Planning Commission. My name is Charlie Harris. I'm chairman of the commission. I'm joined by commission members Billy Bailey, Donna Jacobs, Eric Harrison, Sunday Lephesis, Christina Joyce, and the Knowles. I'm sorry. Okay. Just so you know, we're appointed by Charleston City Council with volunteers, and I know you join in and thanking the commission members for the work on the African City of Charleston. A couple of things when we start the meeting. First of all, if you have a cell phone, I appreciate you turning on silent and setting it off. If you come to speak tonight, we ask you to come up to the podium and tell us who you are, tell us if you represent someone, and tell us your address for the record, because everything is being recorded. I'll read an item on the agenda into the record. We'll then hear from staff on the item. We'll make a recommendation. Then we'll hear from the applicant on the applicant. Then we hear from anyone for the application, or anyone in opposition to the application. Then we'll give an application, some applicant a chance to address any concerns. At that point, we'll close the public aspect of the meeting. Commission members will then discuss it among themselves and make any motions. There's always that urge sometimes when you hear something to raise your hand and say you want to speak. Once we close the public aspect, we really can't go back into the audience. It's not that I don't want you to speak, but yeah, it's just procedure. We have to cut everyone off at that time, and it's just the commission members. Before we start the meeting, I just wanted to, we have a newer commission member sitting to my right, Noel's left. Just had a baby, and she had an excused absence last month because she had a new baby, was just a day or two old, so she got out of the meeting. And we have a gift from the planning commission staff and commission members for you. And Mr. Bailey asked if he get an excused absence, and I said, when him and his wife have another baby, he gets an excused absence. I'll be here. First, we're proud to have our director of the planning commission with us, Mr. Robert Summerfield, and we asked him to come. We appreciate you being here to give us some updates, and the public gets a chance to hear him as well and tell us what's going on. And it's good to have you, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the commission, for hearing me. Just a very brief presentation. I know you all have a very busy evening ahead of you. Lots of comments from the community on 2 items, possibly. So I will try to do this as quickly as possible, but I also want to make sure that you all have some opportunity to ask any questions if you like. So first off, I'd like to, and I don't have a clicker, so I'm going to do this slide. I'd like to just remind the Planning Commission and the members of the public here today, the Planning Department's mission is to improve the built environment and quality of life for all people in the city of Charleston. We do this by having a team that focuses on creating a waterproof community, an inclusive community, and balancing the many issues that are going on in our city and in our community that fall within the planning department purview. See our core functions, they're pretty standard core functions for a department of planning. We're a little different than many departments in that, if we'll go to the next slide, you'll see that our department covers 6 different divisions. We are very, very, very lucky that the city, through a previous downtown plan, envisioned a civic design center for our community. We have our zoning team that handles our BZA meetings. We have our planning team, which is the team that staffs this commission and does a wonderful job of addressing our planning commission. We also have our preservation team, the folks that handle our BAR and our DRB. We also house the business and neighborhood services division within the planning department, which is our basically the city's liaison to our business community as well as to our neighborhood associations. And then finally, there's me and Randy, and the team in admin that kind of just try to keep the wheels on and continue to make sure that the teams all have the resources they need to do the work that they're doing. Planning department does have responsibility for more than 110 public meetings just like this every year, in addition to the thousands of applications that they process and do reviews on. And so we have quite a bit of workload and quite a bit of responsibility, but we have some great dedicated professionals doing that work. So next I wanted to give the Planning Commission just an update on some things that we are doing as a department that I believe will affect the work that you all do here on the commission. The first thing, and I know this is become a popular topic, is the Union Pier development project is starting to gather steam. The Low Company, working with the State Sports Authority, has begun their development process for what the future of Union Pier will look like. They've held two public meetings to just kind of start everyone down the road, some situational awareness of what the project will be addressing and what have you. They have another public meeting coming up later this month, or not this month.
Next Thursday. It'll be
Next
from
Thursday,
Thursday.
yeah, we're still in October. Yes, so later this month, so next week, next Thursday, I believe that's going to be here at the Gilliard. I don't have the brochure yet on that, but I know they're very interested in hearing from the community, and not just the folks down here on the peninsula. You know, this development, Union Pier, is going to be an asset to the larger community, the city of Charleston, not just the folks who live or work on the peninsula. So it's important that everybody take some time out to participate in that process. And so I want to just encourage folks, when they see anything about the Union Pier development come through, please take advantage of looking at that information and providing the feedback, because it's important. This is a kind of a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for the city for a development site like this to become available, and for us to provide our input as that's going to transition from being a public sector property that doesn't pay any taxes to something that'll be on the tax roll, that'll be an opportunity to integrate with the rest of the community. People will actually be able to get to the water there, whereas right now it's all fenced off, and unless you're coming in on a cruise ship, you really don't have access to that area. So that'll be.
How many acres is that? I'm sorry. It's a big, Chris?
I believe it's like 60,
It's amazing.
70.
Yeah.
Commissioner
Amazing
Jacobs said about 70. Yeah, and a good chunk of that, because it's out over the piers, will actually be public space, because they can't build on the piers. The rules and the laws won't allow them to build on the piers anything vertical. So that means that, you know, those piers will be an integrated part of public space. And when you think of waterfront park, you think of the opportunity to continue public space along the waterfront up there. I think there's a lot to be excited about there. Still a lot of work for their team to work on, and it again is the Low team working for the Ports Authority that are developing that plan. But we are going to work with them in concert, including this commission. One of the things is we're working to move forward on a PUD development for that site. We are talking about, and the logistics will have to be worked out, but because of the breadth of that project, we are thinking that we would request of you as the chairman to call a special workshop of the Planning Commission to kind of work through that, because that's going to be a kind of more involved affair. So that's one thing to look forward to. The other thing we're working on, as you all are hopefully aware, is we're embarking on an updated. It started as an updated downtown plan. The current downtown plan is from the 1990s. Significant changes have occurred on the peninsula since then, and particularly in downtown. As we kind of teed up this project, we realized, though, that downtown is more than what it used to be. And so really we are looking at a peninsula plan and looking at the peninsula as a holistic element. So that process is underway. We actually are in the selection process right now for the RFP that went out to select some consulting services to assist the city with that project. So we're hoping to actually get that kicked off potentially before the end of the year. But definitely that would be something we would be looking to get kicked off in earnest with the community
in the new year. Then we have a few items from the city plan implementation that I just wanted to quickly update you on. Obviously, city plan was a huge effort for the city. A 2-year process was adopted at the end of last year, just about a year ago now, actually. And so that process, there were a number of implementation items in there, but a few of the things that we've been able to get kickstarted are we've begun the outreach efforts with the settlement communities. One of the key items there was addressing the fact that we have historically not addressed the settlement communities and allowed them to be more participatory in what's not only happening in the settlement communities, but what is happening in the areas around them that affect their quality of life. So we've begun that work. We've actually submitted for a grant that we're hoping to get in the new year that will allow us to do some more significant work than we were able to do during the city plan effort on addressing and incorporating the needs and wants of our settlement communities into the larger planning context for the city of Charleston. The second thing that we're working on, I wanted to update you on, is the zoning code rewrite. This is a tremendous project. It is a ground up rewrite for the city zoning ordinance, taking into account elevation as one of the foundational elements of that rewrite. And so again, this comes out of the city plan. The city council did appropriate the first half of what we believe that budget to be in last year's budget. That allowed us to go out and do an RFP, and we're currently in the selection process for selecting a consultant to participate in that, as well as we've requested the second half of the funds that we believe are needed for that project in this year's budget. And I actually have a slide where I'll show y'all, what this year's budget requests are proposing. Additionally, one of the things that was in the city plan, and you all have seen amendments, but we're continuing to work on this. We think it's a little nuanced, and so we keep refining what the ADU ordinance regulations are. In fact, we will have an ordinance, I believe it's next meeting, Jim? You think? Yeah. So for your next meeting, we will have an ordinance update on ADUs that will again take a harder look at the requirements and the limitations on ADUs to try to make that easier for folks to come forward and do some ADUs on their property. And then because the city plan isn't just the planning department, I wanted to bring up to speed on 2 other projects that are very much a collaboration of the entire city team and are being spearheaded by our Office of Resilience. And that is the citywide water plan and the slab on grade ordinance. Both of these are efforts that are talked about in many ways in the comp plan. They are being spearheaded by our Chief Resiliency Officer, Dale Morris. And the water plan is already kicked off. They've selected the consultant team that's working on that. They gave a very good just update on their work at the last city council meeting. So I encourage anyone who didn't get to see that to take a look at that on the YouTube video for last city council meeting. And then I think the thing that has been on a lot of people's minds is just the idea of slab on grade. How far do you go in addressing where slab on grade is appropriate, where it may not? And so I think in a very collaborative effort with the development community and with others, Mr. Morgan has been the department's representative on that effort. I think that work will bear fruit and come with a very reasonable ordinance that will come to, I don't know if it'll affect in the zoning code or if it'll just be a more general ordinance, but it will affect development going into the future, and development you all will see as a part of your work on the planning commission, and I think that will be an important thing going forward. And then finally, I just wanted to give you all a real quick overview of what I presented at the city's budget ad hoc committee. These are the funding requests for the Department of Planning for this coming year. Again, it's a large department, many areas of responsibility, but we have, for items that we've kind of discussed that we're working on here, we've requested the second part of the funding that we'll need to make the zoning code happen. We've additionally asked for some augmentation funding for the Peninsula Plan. One of the things as we've gone out for the RFP on that, we've realized that we may have requested too little funding last year in order to make that plan as robust and perform the way that we want. We've also requested in this budget a mobility planner for anyone who's in the development sector that they know, or folks who live in the neighborhoods they know. Transportation and land use are interconnected, and so we want to make sure that as we're moving forward in a lot of our planning and our city plan implementation, that we have really good integration of our mobility conversations with our planning conversations, so we requested that. And then one of the other big ones on there is the affordable housing concierge. Currently, Chloe Stuber does this for the city as her part-time job within her full-time job, helping to support our planning division. But there's enough work there. We believe that that's a full-time position, and so we've requested in support with the Housing and Community Development Department to bring on board an affordable housing concierge to help those affordable housing projects that don't always have the resources to navigate the city's processes, like a for-profit development may, or a larger development that may have a little affordable housing in it, may navigate just the processes that exist within the city. So with that, I will take any questions. I know you all have a busy night still ahead of you, but I wanted to come and deliver on the commitment I made to do these quarterly updates with you all. And
How long have you been with us now? About a year and a half, almost 2 years?
I'm a little over a year and a half now.
Okay, okay. And just for the information, he comes from Las Vegas, so a very active market under planning staff there, so we appreciate your information. Members, Don, Ms. Jake.
Is there a consultant for the water plan? Who is that, please?
So that's Blacking Beach, I believe is the name of the company. They are a national company, and that's the principal for it. The partnership is pretty extensive. Wagner and Ball is a part of that partnership. The solutions, the biohabitats is on there. So they put together a pretty amazing team for that work, and they themselves are pretty reputable in
And that
terms of
water
that.
plan will be used sort of like our comp plan, or will it develop policy that would just go feed into our TRC?
It would kind of fall under the comp plan in terms of being a citywide plan. I think it's going to affect TRC. It may produce some policy recommendations that would update elements of the stormwater regulations, possibly coming from that work. I think, again, it's going to touch multiple areas, not just stormwater, not just planning. It's going to have a lot of infrastructure conversations, so our capital projects team. So a little bit of everything, to be
Would we
honest.
see a draft of that plan before we get into far with the zoning code rewrite?
That is my hope. That plan is on a fast track. The zoning code rewrite, we're anticipating about a 2-year development process for that. My understanding from talking to the chief resiliency officer, he's looking to have that water plan in a 9 to 12 month period. So I think if the plan itself is not done, we will have the lion's share of the material from it to help us inform our conversations, along with the water land use analysis that was conducted as part of the comp planning process to inform from a technical side, the zoning work.
Other commission members? Chris? Great, we appreciate it. And, as you know, this commission is been very interested in trying to help solve the problem of affordable housing. We've had people come in to educate us a little more, people working on different things. So while we're interested in all aspects, I think that's something we've really sunk our teeth in with the problem we have, and we appreciate your input on that as well. So
Absolutely. All right.
thank you. Have
Yes,
a good
sir.
evening, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
We're going to get into the agenda, and first item, I'm going to take the minutes last, if it's okay with commission members, just so we can get into the meeting. Okay, okay, all right. Now, first item on the agenda then is going to be rezonings, number 1300 Rutledge Avenue. 1300 Rutledge Avenue, 2130 to 3132 Mount Pleasant Street, 2127 to 2133 Weaver Street, North Central Peninsula, TMS number 4641, 4000006, 4641 4000007, 4641400008, 4641400009, 4641400010, 464400005, and 464140001, approximately 1.6 acres. Christie zoning from GB, general business, to mixed-use workforce housing in 178. Mr. Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And, so we got a lot to talk about here.
Yes, sir.
This has definitely been a controversial request. We have set a new record in our era of online comments with the number of comments that have come in on this one. So even beyond VAR, BZA, anything like that. So
I know it's a good record to have, but it's a record.
that's right. A lot of community interest in this. And I just want to start off and do a little bit of big picture for just a little bit here, because I welcome this opportunity to give information to lots of people in the public about what's been going on in planning, because, you know, we just did a new comprehensive plan. You all were very involved, obviously, and it was endorsed by you, and it went to city council. And, you know, a lot of the meetings, it's very, very difficult to get people to come out to just kind of generalist plan meetings. People come out when there's controversy, and that's when you learn a lot of what the public is thinking and things. And so I welcome the opportunity to kind of explain the city's position on some things in this area, and have the opportunity to correct a lot of information that was out on Facebook that was not correct. And we all know how difficult it can be to rely on Facebook for true information, or social media in general. But there are a lot of things to explain here, and so I'm going to kind of get into that as part of the overall introduction to this issue. So the site that we are looking at is right here at the corner of Rutledge Avenue and Pleasant Street. It backs up to I-26. It is currently zoned general business, and there was a request to rezone it to MU1 workforce housing. There is general business to the north. There is DR4 residential to the west, that was owned by the Housing Authority, that they're about to invest in and upgrade. And then there's other general business across the street here, and then you go to pretty pure kind of single-family zoning to the south in SR2 areas. So this is a general introduction to the site. Aerial photo shows the current structures on the site. This is a former gas station that's been converted to a restaurant. This is another former gas station that's been converted to a bar and food truck area. And then there's a triplex, I believe, here, and then vacant lots back here. Surrounding it is a church that's been converted to office space, some newer residential units here. Again, the Housing Authority's residential units there, rental and condo regime here, and then a lot of single family and other duplexes and things like that within the neighborhoods themselves. Street view of the property, and this is at the corner of Rutledge and Mount Pleasant Street. And this is at Rutledge and Weaver. And then this is from Weaver, looking from the rear into the property where some former houses were that are no longer there. And then this is the triplex that fronts to Mount Pleasant Street. And then this is the container bar that is one of the other former gas stations. So in our city plan, this is an area that has been designated for what we call city centers. This is the densest and most intense area of the city. And if you look at the overall city map here, you see how it follows the spine of the city: King Street, Meeting Street, I-26. There are a number of reasons for this. This is the area of the city that's highest. This is the area of the city that has the most transportation infrastructure. And this is the area of the city that, you know, with these intensity of uses, is least impactful to existing surrounding neighborhoods, things like that. You'll also notice that some of the areas that are in the upper peninsula zoning along Morrison Drive are also in this city center district. And then you'll notice how a lot of areas like Canterbury, Elliotboro, Charleston Village, South of Broad, French Quarter, Ansonboro, Zeebragboro, East Side are all in kind of a neighborhood or urban kind of designation, because those are all neighborhoods that we're working very, very hard to preserve character of. And then we have a lot of transition up into the neck. We have the Magnolia development that's up here that I think people hear a lot about, that will be an intensively developed area. And then we have Upper Meeting Street, which is converting over from more industrial type uses to more mixed use type of developments in that area too. And also it's important to note, when you look at this zoom in, that, you know, the city center is only in these areas that are like the former gas stations and things like that. We did not carry it down into the neighborhoods proper, because those are areas that are designated to preserve the character of those neighborhoods. So they are designated either suburban or neighborhood, and the densities are very, very different in those areas than they are when you get across the street. So this area is also, in the past, it was part of the settlement community. There's really not much of that settlement community left. I think some of the areas on Cortland would qualify, but a lot of this has changed out a good bit when the gas stations came in, when the housing came in here, when the Joseph Ford Manor came in here, things like that. But we do always like to point those out. In some instances, in parts of the city, the settlement community is still very active and has a lot of influence and interest in things. This one, we have not noticed that one as much in this location. So this is just a slide that we always show you all that kind of talks a little bit about what city centers are. This is where the most dense and mixed-use portions of the city would be. This is where the tallest buildings would be. Buildings of regional significance, blocks may be smaller, streets already have street tree planning, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's an example of those. So then a little bit of comparison from what the current zoning is, which is general business, which allows a wide range of commercial uses. It also allows commercial uses that are 24 hours a day. So you could have a convenience store on the site 24 hours a day, no rezoning needed, nothing like that. You could have, a late night restaurant. The restaurants that are there are not late night, but they could have late night restaurants there. The request for mixed use workforce housing is in our NU1 category, NU1 WH. That means its commercial uses line up with limited business. So from a commercial standpoint, it is a now zone. It is taking what could be a 24-hour a day site where a gas station could be built and operate 24 hours a day and limiting those. They would be limited to 7 a.m. to like 11 p.m. Again, this is an effort to be neighborhood friendly because 24-hour a day operations like you currently have on the private property can be very detrimental to the character of the neighborhood. This is a site that is also very high as far as Charleston Heights are, elevations are. On this image, we see that it is between 13 and 16 feet in height, some of the highest land in the downtown area. It is a site that at present, as best as we can tell, has zero flood and stormwater infrastructure, zero. So all the water from the site runs to everybody else at present, runs off into the neighborhoods. Any redevelopment here, no matter what type of redevelopment would occur, has to meet our new stormwater standards, which are some of the most stringent in the nation, if not the most stringent in the nation. So it will be a dramatic difference up here, where the stormwater will have to be stored on site and released very slowly. So that happens with any type of redevelopment here. That's something we're very proud of, is that we've got a really stringent stormwater ordinance that will help prevent some of the flooding issues that we've had over the years. This new ordinance has only been in place for, I guess, 2-3 years, something like that, but it makes a massive difference. And if you talk to the development community, they will also tell you how much it makes a massive increase in cost of development too, because of all the storage that has to happen on the site. So then we have existing height districts. There's been a lot of misinformation about this site in reference to the existing height district. There is no height change request as part of this rezoning. 2/3 of the site is 2.5 stories. There were some images that were on Facebook and provided that do not show 2.5 story buildings. They show 3-story buildings. The front 2/3 of this site, as evidenced by this map, is 2.5 stories, and staff would not be supporting an increase in that 2.5 stories in front. Part of that is because we're trying to mitigate the density that would be allowed here to make it reflect the character of the neighborhoods more. And these neighborhoods have 1, 2, 2.5 story houses, so we feel that the front of the site should maintain that 2.5 story height. The rear against the interstate, which is roughly 35 feet tall, does allow for 4 stories. What this creates is an opportunity to help mitigate some of that terrible effect of that elevated interstate that we were all kind of inundated with from the 1960s on. And we've been seeing that in a lot of places in downtown where we're trying to put the taller buildings up against the interstate because it helps mitigate the sound. It helps to make good use of the area that can be noisy, because there are lots of people that are fine with living against the interstate, and that can help make it more conducive to the neighbors that remain in other areas if things are created against the interstate. So that's an important thing to see too. So the height is 2.5 for 2/3 of the site, and then 4 stories for about 1/3 of it up against the interstate. Now, perhaps one of the biggest things that is going to change the character of this area is our low country rapid transit. And that is a transit system unlike what we've ever had in Charleston. It's essentially buses that function almost like light rail. And I'm going to show you a slide that goes through the whole area of that. But this site is within that key quarter mile of one of the major stops of that site, which is right here at King Street and Mount Pleasant Street, where many people every day will get on a bus that they can take them to the medical district and other areas, or take them to work in East Charleston. It is the best transit we will have. It is funded. The county has its sales taxes going towards it, and it has been checking all the boxes on the federal level to meet the federal funding criteria. So this is something that is happening. And we are working together with other jurisdictions in this area to plan for this. And that involves something you call transit-oriented development. So within proximity, walking proximity of these stops, you really try to create density. Do you go into existing neighborhoods and try to rezone those and change those? No. But on sites that are good redevelopment sites, maybe some former gas stations, maybe former parking lots, things like that, you try to create the opportunities for density that helps support transit. I'm going to show you some other slides. This is the entire length of the system, which goes basically up to Somerville, comes down Rivers Avenue, comes into the city on King Street. At King Street and Mount Pleasant, it crosses over to Meeting Street and then goes down Meeting Street to Calhoun, and then goes over to the medical district and goes through the medical district and then repeats the circle. These are completely new buses. These are buses that you board at a level elevation. You don't have to climb up into it. They are much more 21st century than anything we've ever had in Charleston. They'll be all brand new buses. They will run on a very regular system. A good bit of the route is on its own separate dedicated bus lanes, as indicated by this map. So it will run with regularity with whether or not the traffic is moving along it. And it will also involve extensive improvements to infrastructure beyond and right around those stops to help people walk to those stops, like people might live a 5-minute walk away, and also help bike and pedestrian infrastructure in the area so you can take your bike to a stop and get on a bus, things like that. So a massive change.
What's the expected timetable on that?
I'm sorry?
Do we have a timetable on that?
I believe that the overall implementation is by later in the 2020s, by like 28. I think they're looking to get under construction in a couple of years.
Thank you.
The Secretary of Transportation was just in town, and I have a slide of that. But anyway, this is a zoom in on the route as it goes through downtown. So again, providing direct link from Somerville all the way through North Charleston into the medical district. It's a massive sea change for the way our transportation infrastructure works. It's the biggest thing we've ever had to change our transportation infrastructure, other than, say, building a Cooper River Bridge or building I-26. So, and one of the things that I was talking about, the TODs, that the transit-oriented development around there, is that they have certain designations in these stops that are along the route. And the stop that is there at Mount Pleasant Street is designated as a town center stop, where from a transit planning standpoint, this is not something that's just dreamed up for Charleston. This is something that is based on national models for bus rapid transit. So there is science behind this. That within an area, a half-mile area of, really it's a mile radius of the site, or a half-mile radius of the site, a mile across, you would seek to have, 4,000 households. Now that sounds like a lot, but we've got a lot of potential in this area if we stay out of existing neighborhoods and just focus on the redevelopment sites that are key there. Here you see the town center designation for that site here at Mount Pleasant Street. And the secretary was just in town with Representative Clyburn, so we've got a lot of political clout behind this. Of course, Representative Clyburn is the number 2 person in Congress, and the secretary's there. And so funding is looking good, and everything is looking positive for this project. So our recommendation, based on the comprehensive plan and all this kind of background here, is that an appropriate request for this location. Again, it is based on the fact that we feel that the height limits will help to limit the density on this site, and the fact that, I haven't mentioned this, we do have design review on the site. It is on the area that is designated for 4 stories, But should someone be trying to develop the whole site, and I think the development team that's going to speak to you tonight is trying to develop the whole site, they would theoretically put that all into one parcel, so then the design review would be on the entire site. So we would have design review. Design review is a public process. It looks at things like where access to the building is. It looks at architecture of the building. It looks height and massing, the way it relates to the street, materials, all these types of things that the public will get to weigh in on as part of that process. So that's another thing that we think is a check in the system that will make this a good project in this location. So that was kind of a long-winded discussion.
That's
But I
all
think
right. It's
there's
good
a lot of
information.
background here, and be happy to answer questions on that, but staff is recommending for approval of the request. Yes, ma'am.
So, that was really good information that you shared. So, one thing is that I remember looking at our Century 5 plan because I remember a project that I recall occurring actually right near that site. And our Century 5 plan actually used to have which was, I forgot when that was implemented, called for a
2010.
2010. And so it called for a different type of designation, more like an urban versus what we have right here. So can you kind of explain, 10 years makes a huge difference. And so can you kind of I know you've already given your explanation now,
Sure.
but where we were 10 years ago versus 10 years today.
It's all about the bus rapid transit. The fact that along this corridor, we're trying to promote density in areas that are good for redevelopment, not in the middle of a historic neighborhood or something like that, but where they might have a couple old gas stations or parking lots, things like that, that is a good place to create some of the density that's in proximity to the key stop. And again, it's mitigated by this height. The height thing is very, very important as far as limiting the density that would occur. Is it more density that could go there than currently is allowed under GB? Yes, it is. But is it, very large levels of density that could occur just a few blocks away on Morrison Drive or something like that? No, it won't be anywhere approaching that.
So essentially, 10 years ago, if you had somebody who tried to do this type of proposal, you might have recommended against it just because we didn't
If
have
the low country rapid transit wasn't a real thing then. Yeah.
Is it design review BAR or just DRB?
It would be DRB unless there were some other request to do like a merit height or something like that. And even then, DRB is empowered to do that, but somebody could request that go to BAR too.
And real quick, where's the low line in
Oh, yeah.
respect to this also?
So the low line, I'll just use this image here, but the low line is right here, starting in this corridor here. That's the old rail area. And of course, it connects directly to the bus rapid transit stop here. And then there is an interest in trying to get that further north that the bus rapid transit will help a lot with extra sidewalks and pedestrian and bike accommodations as it moves along its route on King Street.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Is the applicant with us? Thank you, sir. If you come forward, tell us who you are and thank you.
My name is Clayton Caffrey. Thank you to all the commissioners this evening. I'm from Chicago. I'm representing our team here this evening. And thank you for that work, Christopher. I appreciate all the help you've given us to date, guiding us through the process. We are here today looking for MU1 workforce housing. We think that it is a residential use for a residential neighborhood. We would like to find a way to integrate that residential use in the best manner in the property. And one of the things that we will go on record as saying, because it has been brought up a number of times, that we'll just buy out of the workforce housing. We will commit to building the workforce housing in the project at the levels as required under the ordinance. So there's a lot of comments. I'm sure you have questions.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Does anyone have any questions there? Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Good to have you with us. Thank you. Is anyone here in favor of this application that would like to speak? Well, in opposition. First of all, let me, in opposition, I'd like to get a hand who'd like to speak. Okay, good. Not so many, but that's great. I just wanted to make sure we didn't have to, I hate to stop anybody in terms of time, but I'd appreciate if a point was made by someone, maybe not repeated, But we appreciate y'all coming, and if you first want to come forward, tell us who you are and where you live and if you represent anyone. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Eddie Bello. I'm an architect here in town. I've worked here for 30 years and do most of the work downtown. And for 25 years, I've lived on Rutledge, 2 blocks from this site. I'm not opposed to mixed use on this site. I know it really well. I think the issue is the density. There's nothing to keep the applicant from having a mixed use site here with commercial and residential. It's definitely appropriate. I think the issue is a designation at the city center. If you go to the map that Christopher showed, it's unfortunate that this property was designated a city center. If you look at the majority of those sites, they're all on the King and Meeting corridor. Much different from this site, completely different. And for some reason, it just flips over into Rutledge, which is an entirely different scale, entirely different context than everywhere else. So you think about what the city center's designation is for. It is for high density locations. All the stuff on Harper Morrison completely makes sense. There's not a neighborhood there. I'm an architect. I've practiced. We have several projects. I understand rezonings, understand mixed use. I'm just very much opposed to this because it's completely out of character. One of the things that I think gives this board an opportunity to deny this is what it says in your ordinance, and that is development in city centers is dependent on the surrounding context. This is completely out of character for the surrounding context. The height district, I don't really worry about height that much. It's a little bit misleading to say it's at the back of the property. 4 stories actually fronts on Mount Pleasant Street. So that's next to the interstate, but it's on Mount Pleasant. And the last thing I would say, I'm very familiar with how review boards work, BAR, DRB. The problem with these types of projects are when you allow a developer to have maximum density, as much as they can get on it. First of all, they have much less parking requirements. But what they do is, and no offense, but I work with developers, I know how it works, they pack as much in there, and so that leaves the DRB or the BAR with very little opportunity to help shape that building. If you've got a box that's this big, all they can do is add stuff to it. If it's the right scale and it's not maxed out and it's basically what GB allows, then you've got an opportunity for the development to be more in keeping with the character of the neighborhood. So again, I'm not opposed to density in the right places. I'm not opposed to mixed use, but I think it's just unfortunate that for some reason to me, there was a mistake in the plan, but that's why you have a public hearing for you guys to decide whether or not it's appropriate.
Thank you, Mr. Bellows. Appreciate it. Come on up, young lady. Thank you.
Thanks for letting me go next. I have another meeting after this. It's already started. My name is Jan Schuman. I live at 21 Hester in the neighborhood. I am opposed to the density and to the change in zoning. One of the things that was discussed at the Wagon Terrace Neighborhood Association meeting on Monday night was that it would be 3 stories, not 2.5, 3 stories, and then 4. So I don't know where the 2.5 comes from. Also, there are trees on that lot. Aren't we supposed to be trying to preserve our land and our heritage and our green spaces? All those would have to come down. If we kept it general business, we'd be able to have we'd have some density, but not the level that they are requesting. We also, one of the things they mentioned, if we go to workforce housing and MU1, is 1 corner of that lot or some area would be a business. And if it is a coffee shop or a restaurant or something like that, that people are coming and going every day, all day, that's going to increase the traffic volume and the danger of anybody trying to cross the street there on a bike, on foot, trying to get to the rapid transit. That's too much at one spot. It's already a dangerous place. So while they were discussing that people coming in and out twice a day is a touch for parking or a touch for traffic, the impact of the business was not discussed, because that's an additional impact other than the touches, which would be equivalent to what we have now. I'm concerned about the height. I'm concerned about destroying the trees, the stormwater with the cisterns, I think is awesome. And I think the 50 or 60 units there that has room to grow, and for our Board of Architectural Review or any group that is working on that prospect to come up with something that fits into the neighborhood is fine. But 150 units on that space, tearing down the trees, tearing down all the what's already there, that doesn't fit with our neighborhood. And that's my opinion, and I hope you will listen to it
Thank you.
and take it into
Appreciate
consideration.
it.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Zach Lasidi, 59 Cypress, and in addition to being a resident, voter, and a neighborhood association member, I actually passed through a BAR meeting on a building only a few blocks south of here, only about 6 months ago. And when I tried to do that, I actually knocked on the residents' doors, I talked to people. I wasn't trying to bulldoze any buildings, I wasn't trying to upzone anything, and I think before the city approves something, that those developers need to come and talk to residents, because there is opposition, because there is a lot of confusion. I personally really enjoy going to Container Bar, but I also know that it does create a lot of traffic. And so building 150 units and while maintaining some semblance of those businesses is going to create a lot of extra traffic that, you know, when you remove parking, you're going to be parking those people inside the neighborhood. So I'd ask for a little bit more conversation from the developers and a little bit more time on this board and make them actually come and give those presentations to the community.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Who's next? Come on up, one at a time. Thank you. Mr. Ray, thank you. How are you, man?
Cashin Droulet, 40 East Bay Street, Historic Charleston Foundation. On behalf of the Historic Charleston Foundation, I'm recommending denial of this rezoning application. The site is located in north central, west of I-26. In this part of the peninsula, we find that I-26 kind of acts as a line of demarcation, a physical barrier between denser, larger scale developments in the Morrison Drive and Main Street corridors, and then the traditional residential that is north central. Scale and context on the east and west sides of I-26 are vastly different. And as Mr. Bella pointed out, the designation is city center. That definition is super important. The city center be dependent on surrounding context. Rezoning this site to MU1WH is inconsistent with the definition. The surrounding context of North Central is characterized by predominantly one-story homes, single-family residential, homes that are set back from the street, and also set back from neighboring properties. A zoning category with no setback requirements and density and no density limitations is discordant with the context of the neighborhood. HCF recognizes and we support the need for transit-oriented development, particularly for sites in close proximity to the Lowcountry rapid transit. However, there are a lot of other numerous infill development opportunities east of I-26, east of that physical barrier, where there's existing context for large-scale buildings, density, and existing MUWH zoning. And additionally, the stop to the north of this stop on Mount Pleasant Street will service the forthcoming Magnolia development, where up to 4,000 housing units could be developed. Consequently, there is not a shortage of opportunities to create workforce housing in more appropriate locations nearby to this site. And we would respectfully ask the commission to deny the application.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Come on up, young lady. Please, if you would, this isn't a public hearing, so I understand it gets emotional, but we appreciate no pause, so thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Margaret. I live at 4 Fields Place. And if I am misspeaking on anything from the meeting, please do correct me. But from what I was told at the meeting on Monday is that this is proposed to be 150 units, the bulk of which will be one-bedroom units. I was told that the goal is to have a more mature, more stable, less moving type of tenant. But from what I was told, there will not be a guarantee of even one space for every single unit because according to the zoning, which I was repeatedly told was only because of the city and their zoning, that any of their mixed use or workforce housing were not guaranteed a spot, that they're only guaranteed to build half a spot per unit. So essentially half the units would not have parking. And that does not include any visitors, any ride share, food delivery, people going to whatever this coffee shop or commercial space is. And it was completely openly acknowledged that the expectation is that the neighborhoods around accommodate for all these extra cars. I think that's irresponsible. I think that's in some ways discriminatory because frankly, most people have a car. Based on your income requirements for this house moving forward, I think that the salary cap is up to $68,000 for workforce housing. Is that correct? What is the cap?
I'm not
That's
sure.
That's close.
Okay. For most, I feel like for most people, based on my experience of working in lower income neighborhoods, if you are leaving the neighborhood to work, many people have cars. If you go to lower income apartment buildings, their parking lots are full. So I think it's a little uninformed and arrogant to be like, well, you know, this is, workforce housing, you shouldn't have parking and everyone else has to accommodate because we couldn't plan for you. I think that that's just irresponsible.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for coming. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Maximiliano Hernandez. I am a resident of District 3. I live at 923 Rutledge Avenue, about 100 steps away from Rutledge Cat Company. The proposed site, I went to the Saturday meeting at the old firehouse in North Central, and the images that were put online that people were looking at were renderings that the developers had shown to us, renderings of what the site was going to look like, what parking spaces were going to look like. And what we were presented was 135 parking spaces for a 150 unit apartment building. We were also told that at the corner of Mount Pleasant and Rutledge Avenue, the structure would be at 3 stories, not 2.5, and the 4-story section would be on the off-ramp section of the 26. There is no parking right now currently on Mount Pleasant Street from Rutledge Avenue to King Street. You cannot park there. You cannot park north of Mount Pleasant Street on Rutledge Avenue. You cannot park on the opposite side on Weaver Street of where the site would be. So my block, Magnolia, Ensign Street, we would absorb all the parking. And I lived in a big apartment complex like this in Mount Pleasant before I had the luck of finding a house in Wagner Terrace, which I loved, and we fixed up and we love living in. It is the last reasonably affordable place that someone can buy a house, fix it, and live in there with their family. People still have their kids sell lemonade on the street, kids ride their bikes. When you introduce this kind of urban density, I'm from New York originally. I lived in urban density. The neighborhood changes. You lose green spaces and they're incredibly difficult to get back. The woman who spoke earlier is absolutely right. It's covered in old growth trees. That'll all go. We're going to lose. We get nothing as residents in this, and the idea that it's a binary choice of like, oh, we get a gas station or a laundromat is ridiculous because we would come out and fight that too. What I'm saying is the chance of perhaps another restaurant group coming in and mitigating, buying the property, buying Container Bar, buying Rutledge Cab, I don't think has even been discussed. I've reached out to local restaurant groups, big restaurant groups that own really big restaurants, had no idea that any of this was happening. No district person reached out. No one informed them that there was an opportunity of maybe buying Rutledge Cap Company. And when I said that, they were like, tell us more. Would they want to sell this? Do you know? I'm like, I'm a resident. I'm just informing you of what's going on and the possibility. We don't want to lose our community spaces. We don't want to lose our parking. We don't want traffic to be worse at that snarl corner that also affects District 6 with Lowndes Point. We don't want this in our neighborhood. So I please ask you to please vote no on rezoning.
Thank you, sir.
Sir,
Yes, sir.
could you just say your name one more time?
Maximiliano Hernandez.
We're going to ask you about that
Can
later.
you say it one more time?
I'll shoot you an email. It'll be really long.
Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Ben Cash, for Pier Head neighborhood. I'm not going to repeat what's been said. I'm certainly not here to bash developers in Charleston. That's probably an easy thing to do. I think ultimately it's constraint, they are operating within the constraints that you all set. And I was asking a council member about how often does this happen? That there's the fee, and I understand that it's, it's easy to say that now, but as a business person, I know that when circumstances change and certain things aren't viable, you have to adjust. And so what the council person told me was that of 19 recent scenarios where developers were offered a fee, 18 of the 19 paid the fee and blew out the things. So it's naive to assume, even with assurances and things, that this will not change, that they will somehow stay within the limits. And so it could be 150, it could be greater than 200, because at that point, there's no constraint. And we don't have the workforce housing. So it's maxed out, things are maxed out, and we don't have the benefit of the workforce housing. So one of the small thing is that what we understood at the meeting on Monday was that parking is being paid for independently, separately of the lease, the rent, and there was a gentleman who brought up a point of a community or a development in Mount Pleasant, where what happened was when it was an extra fee, nobody went for the parking and they just parked in the neighborhood, like almost all of them. So to say that there's a one-to-one match or even a less than one-to-one match for this parking and assume that that's going to account for the parking, yet not assuming that the restaurant issue aside is also naive, because people who are looking for one big place, they're going to try to maximize their cost, and they're going to park in neighborhoods surrounding the area. So
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Appreciate it. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Christina Hill. I lived on at 927 Rutledge, which I think where'd you go? I think you bought the house once.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. And it's 97 steps. So very close. So I just wanted, I wanted to talk a little bit about what it was like living on Rutledge in that area, and also why I moved back into the neighborhood onto Sunnyside. And do any of you live in Wagner Terrace? Okay. One. Okay, so it does flood in this on Weaver and on the front of Container Bar, where I think it's in front of Mount Pleasant Street, right? There's flooding. So there's already flooding there, and it's not even when it's pretty bad rains. It's kind of all the time. So I wanted to point that out because I didn't actually want to speak today until I heard him explain the city's point of view, and I wanted to correct a few things from that. Also, saying that it could hypothetically be a 24-hour place, that's kind of, just trying to scare us into making it seem like this apartment building is better than a 24-hour place. It's a restaurant now, and it might stay that way. We also haven't realized the effects of Magnolia and how much extra traffic that's going to bring in when that shows up. I imagine that we aren't addressing that today either. Saying that a high rise is going to help with noise. Noise was never really a problem. I lived there for 8 years. We had single pane windows. They're pretty crappy, right?
I think so.
Yeah. Oh, good. Noise wasn't really a problem there. But so part of the reason that we moved off of Rutledge, we had a cat get hit by a car from someone coming off of 26. Our neighbors lost their dog also. The neighbors across the street also lost a dog all pretty early on when we lived there. When we wanted to have kids, we decided that wasn't safe enough to live in a place where the traffic was already moving so fast. And the last point, we also had our car hit 4 different times on when we were parked on the street. We had to park on the street because you only get this much space for parking. And we had a car hit in front of our house and then hit the 4 cars in front of it, and it only stopped because it hit a telephone pole. That's how fast they were going. And so I think I hit all of the points I wanted to make.
Thank you, ma'am.
And that's all.
Appreciate it. Thank you for coming. Yes,
I
ma'am.
had 4 months old, so I have to go, but I've declined.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello,
My name is Beth Martin. I live at 892 Rutledge Avenue. My concern with this is the impact of Rutledge for the traffic. I have a driveway that goes onto Rutledge, and Rutledge is technically a state highway, which means that the city declines to do anything about the traffic on Rutledge, or they don't want to add a stop sign, they don't want to add stoplights. If there's a pothole, the city doesn't do anything about it, and the state doesn't really do anything. I have been in an accident trying to get out of my driveway, and that is, if there's anyone parking on my side of the street, it's basically impossible to see out of my driveway. And that doesn't happen that much now, but if there was more traffic burden or parking burden 3 blocks up from my house, that would definitely happen. The distance between lights from Mount Pleasant Street to the next light is about 3/4 of a mile. So people drive incredibly fast. So getting out of the driveway, and Rutledge is not that wide, it's a lot. So yeah, adding extra cars, and the side streets are crazy tight. So I can't imagine living there. My other point is that I understand that affordable housing is a very important and necessary thing. There is already low-income housing at the end of the block. If you add workforce housing there too, you're basically bookending low-income housing together and creating a large swath of the same thing, which kind of creates a big zone and blocks off one giant part of the city. And we already have a vibrant section there, and instead you're creating a zone of just one type of thing. And I think that will devalue the area.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for coming. Yes, sir.
My name is Mark Engelgate. I live at 56 Alberta Avenue in Whiting Terrace. And I'm also here for my cousin at 950 Rutledge. She lives in the corner of Mount Pleasant in Rutledge. Yes, sir. Across the Friday. 2 real quick points that did come up just previously. Magnolia Development, that's an immense amount of traffic coming down here. If you have this volume of people trying to exit to and from the driveway after Magnolia Development, you're going to have a pinch point of the main artery coming to our neighborhood. And it's going to be thousands of units, residential and commercial, with 150 people trying to get in and out of the driveway just a block away. That's a huge problem. We already have a fantastic workforce, affordable housing area across the street. If we're trying to compare scale, look how spread out those homes are. It's only showing a fraction of it. That's a well laid out community. Playground, parks, homes spread apart. That works. That works, and it meets the need for this area. We don't need more space. We're very opposed to it. My cousin across the street is very opposed to it. One last point, she tried to get a small sign for a mobile business she has in front of her home. Zoning said no, it impacts the neighborhood, it's residential. Her zoning is different. If she couldn't get a sign in front of her house for her business, it's not even based there, just a home office. The zoning said no, it impacts the neighborhood. This is quite different from that small sign.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
You're done.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you all very much. Kip Watson, 106 Donovan Avenue. I would invite you guys to decline this request. Everybody has made pretty much all the points I wanted to make. I would like to address the fact that Rutledge Avenue is currently a main egress from I-26 for people to get off 26 and come downtown, despite the presence of numerous other downtown exits. That stretch of Rutledge, like that gentleman just mentioned, will have the Magnolia development coming. It already gets very congested in the morning and the afternoon. This will just add to that congestion. The light rail is nice, but it is going to be completed well after this development is completed. How do you remediate the traffic issues in that time gap? So that would be my only point. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for coming. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Louisa Gooding, 83 Sushi. I was a little disappointed when I heard somebody say that we need city centers. I totally understand. But they said that they didn't want it to impact neighborhoods. We are a neighborhood, we're families. I mean, I can't wait for Halloween to see these little kids. And I feel like he just totally disregarded North Central, Wagner Terrace. We are neighborhoods, we are families, we're small homes. And the impact on my street from having houses from those cars parking, right now we're single lane at night because everyone needs to park on the street. And I I can't even turn off King onto Rutledge safely. I have to go around because of the double lanes. You're adding all those cars to my street. It's gonna be devastating, and it's gonna make me have to sell my home.
Thank you for coming, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Tyler Huter. I'm at 2219 Pleasant Street, so I'm a block and a half down from the site. And we've talked about density. One other aspect is the huge development that is going on right next to Santee's on Morrison Avenue. And no one's in that building yet. That is going to add a ton of cars, a ton of people to that area on very small streets. And I have not seen any plans as to how to update the traffic plan or how to accommodate that when we're already having that development come into the area. The other point that I'd like to say is I also am on the board of the Wagner Terrace Neighborhood Association. I'm not speaking for the board, but many of this were presented this plan on Monday night. And I would ask, if you don't vote no tonight, that you at least defer and allow us to get a more formal response from the neighborhood.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for coming. Yes, sir.
Good evening. I'm Jason Sackman. I'm 97 Peachtree Street. I just wanted to say good evening to the Planning Commission members. I know that this job's not easy. I just want to thank you for your service.
Thank you for your service as well, sir.
Thank you. I'm here tonight as a resident of Wagner Terrace and someone who lives 4 blocks away from the proposed development at 1300 Rutledge Ave. And before I share my comments, I do want to just acknowledge some things. Mr. Caffey, who is the developer for the project, in my opinion, has been transparent. It's been a bit quick, but it's been transparent. You've come to 2 neighborhood association meetings. You met with me. You've been meeting with Christopher. It's easy to vilify developers, but I do want to say, my estimation, it's been very transparent. And the very fact that the Planning Commission this evening has received over 200 comments is an indication that people have had some opportunity to learn and to provide their comments. The proposed project, and I'm glad that there's folks in the audience that are interested about development and interested about affordable housing. The proposed project is a microcosm, in my opinion, of all the current challenges and opportunities as a city, whether it be stormwater, traffic, parking, affordable housing, or public transit. All of these are embedded in this project in some capacity. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say there was a bit of NIMBYism as well. By 2030, I just want to share with folks, this city, our beloved city, is projected to need 15,000 affordable housing units to keep pace with what's happening. We must recognize the need for affordable housing, but some recoil when the affordable housing project is being planned in their neighborhood. What compounds the challenge is that many of us are unsure how these projects are even funded. And affordable housing, as Mr. McCaffrey will tell you, and the city will tell you, is not cheap to build. In order for us to meet that lofty goal, it's going to require an honest conversation about density and height, and the city cannot accomplish that goal alone. We are going to need developers to assist us, which is why we need to make it more affordable for developers to build the housing we need. And this is why I absolutely support the idea of including affordable housing in any new multi-unit housing projects. I just wish people had a better understanding of the challenges we have around affordable housing and how these projects are funded. Spending some time on Facebook, and I'm just going to share, it's a no wonder that as I sit here tonight and looked across the room, people shaking their heads, thinking Mr. Christopher was providing incorrect information. I can't tell you how much incorrect information was shared on the Wagner Terrace Facebook page this past 2 weeks. It's dismaying to me. Wrong pictures being posted, incorrect data. If you need information, call the city, call your representatives. I think the city's at a critical place that we have to do a better job as a city explaining the challenges and articulating some of the possible solutions. With all that to say, I've weighed the merits of this particular project. And there are things I like and things I don't. I support the workforce housing component. I support the overall concept, which includes the restaurant cafe space, especially when you consider the alternatives. I just want to be clear, it's not blackmail and threats. There are other alternatives to go into the space. That's just the nature of business. Another gentleman asked, and I'm a restaurant owner. No restaurant can afford that parcel of property at this point. Maybe 10 years ago they could have, but no restaurant owner is going to pay for that parcel of property at the current rate. Having said all that, I believe a 150 unit complex is too large for this location, and it's going to exacerbate the existing traffic and parking issues. Because of the size, I do think it's going to have a detrimental effect on the quality of life for those living near the project. Having said all that, I do think a smaller project with the same concept would be something I could personally support, and I'm venturing to guess the neighborhood would eventually support, especially if they were involved in the design and planning from the start. I respectfully ask the Planning Commission to deny the rezoning request and ask the developer to come back to the table with a less dense project that makes financial sense for him and is more aligned with the neighborhood's vision and experience and expectations. Thanks for allowing me to share my thoughts this evening.
Thank you for being with us, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, sir. You want to speak? Yeah. Come on, please. Thank you.
Drew Harris. I actually live in Mount Pleasant.
It's okay. You still get to speak.
Still get to speak. I appreciate Jason's comments tonight. Appreciate the clarity given by Christopher Morgan. I've seen a lot of these developments over the past 15, 20 years that we've lived here. I've watched the city plan being developed and kind of how it all went through with Christopher Morgan and his group and all that stuff. The city has needed a mass transit of some kind for a very long time. The property values have exceeded what the general workforce can afford. So a mass transit like the low line is going to be very beneficial to the city, and I think that's why it was approved, that's why it was planned, and it took a lot of thought and planning. I've seen developers come and go in this area that do not consider what the residents and the locals, the businesses, everything have. They look at just the dollar. You can see some of those projects that have been approved, on the other side, in Morrison Yard, stuff like that. These developers in particular have been very forthright, and it's been a very long process, over a year and a half, that they've been working with the local architects, the designers, some of the other people, trying to figure out what could work and will work in this area and still maintain the feeling of the neighborhood. Density is always something that residents are going to oppose. It's just a fact. I think that this project fits within the city plan. I think it fits within the density being against the highway versus on Mount Pleasant. The plan itself, if y'all haven't seen it, I'm sure the developer would share the plans in any sense, has major changes to the, they're adding a turn lane. There's going to be.
So if you address us first, please, thank you.
There's going to be a turn lane. They're addressing it. They're addressing the traffic, the parking, all of these things, and it's taken a very long time to get to that point of this meeting. They've worked hand in hand with, not hand in hand, but they've taken suggestions, recommendations from the planning staff. They've involved them to try to figure out where it is. I think that there's a tipping point where something like this makes sense and when it doesn't. And that's from the development standpoint, where, as Jason just said, to get the affordable housing, there has to be assistance from the financial side and the development side. This allows both of those things. A certain percentage, they've committed to not taking the buyout and providing 20% or whatever the percentage is of workforce housing. In my opinion, it's been very transparent. I've seen them working with the neighbors. They went to both community meetings. This is a zoning request change. There's a lot of time between now and the DRB and some of the other meetings to see what the actual density and growth and all that can and may be. And I think there can be a lot more involvement of the community and a lot more involvement of other people to help guide this project appropriately.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Yes, sir. Last man up, I think. Go ahead.
Last man.
Yes, sir.
Franklin Adams, 2298 Mount Pleasant Street. I am a developer myself, so I tread lightly here. I was not planning on speaking, but it dawned on me when Mr. Morgan brought up the master comprehensive plan. We run into zoning issues all the time. 10 years, this plan's 10 years old, 12 years old. 2. Well,
all right.
Oftentimes plans change. I think if you look at what's available on the major corridors, Morrison, Meeting, and King, that's where the residents are going. That's where the massive development's going. You've got an interstate barrier. I think this is just the wrong side of the street. We run into plans all the time that have comprehensive master plans that are changed or gone against. You have $1 million houses on Rutledge from Mount Pleasant Street down to almost across town. I just don't think this is the place for it. The city owns the old Coca-Cola building. That could be residential, high-density workforce. There's a ton of opportunity on your major traffic corridors along Morrison, Meeting, and King, as I indicated. And I just don't think this is the plan for it. International traffic standards indicate interstates as a traffic barrier. If you're coming down this way or going the other way, it certainly is a barrier. You have trucks coming off the off ramp, going left. It's just, this is not the side of the street, in my opinion, for it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for coming. Anyone else? Okay, great. We'll give the applicant a chance to rebut, but before we do that, I just want to say, for the record, as Mr. Morgan stated, we had 166 responses on this item. There were 4 neutral, 4 support, and 158 opposed. Just for the record, so I read it in. A little more fresh on the applicant, but we'll let you go ahead and give us any rebuttals you'd like to give us. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. A couple of items that I wanted to address. First of all, there's a perception that 150 units will bring a significant increase in traffic to the neighborhood. Today, between Rutledge Cab Company and Container Bar, the owner of the site, Mr. Brad Krieger, has provided us the number of daily covers and visits that they provide out of those 2 restaurants. And those restaurants get over 700 visits per day, one-way visits. So double that, you can imagine what that is. And so this is from the operator of the restaurants. If you've seen the Container Bar at night, they utilize the easement underneath the SC dot place, and that parking lot is very, very full. So parking, I think we have addressed at least 1 per unit in the total plan. 135 underneath cover, another 17 from the surrounding areas. We've done that by pulling the building back from the lot lines and included parallel parking. We've also addressed the corner intersection at the behest of the planning department by including a turn lane. As it regards flooding and the like, I think Christopher described it best. Everything that we will do will have to address what is currently there today, which is a crown site with a bunch of sewer covers that have actually been overgrown by trees, roots, and the like. It is a redevelopment. It is a residential neighborhood. This is a residential use coming into a residential neighborhood. And I would ask that we work together past the zoning change in a continued open process. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. That sort of closed the public aspect of this. It's interesting. Mr. Morgan has said, and I hear it and I see it, that there's a lot of information that's out there that's factual. There's a lot that's not factual. It gets concerning, but I understand people get emotional and things like that, and I appreciate the applicant's response. Mr. Bailey, did you?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I thought that Christopher made a great point early in the meeting that oftentimes when you just have sort of a pedestrian discussion, you don't get an opportunity to educate on some factual issues. And so before I started my comments, I don't know if Mr. Cash is still here, but he mentioned that 18 out of 19 developments that have happened in the city since the regulation was passed that allowed the developer to contribute funds versus actually building the units. That data sounds about right. I think the last time we got an update on it, it was about right. And we're concerned about that too. So concerned, in fact, that I don't remember how long ago, but we essentially doubled the cost to contribute into that fund with the hope that people will start actually having to make a decision and build those units. So we're on the same page. Whatever the fee was, it obviously wasn't enough. And so this commission really wants to see affordable housing get built in these projects. But that's not what I plan to talk about. I wanted to ask you for just a couple of minutes to share some concerns that I have about this application. And I'll touch briefly on the merit, and a lot of great points have been made both by Christopher as well as people in the community, but my comments are primarily focused on the process. I'll start by reminiscing about a process that we went through not long ago, and that was rewriting the comprehensive plan, which only happens once every 10 years. And it's a daunting but thoughtful exercise to go through. And what it does is it forces each of us on the commission to consider all the different challenges that we face as a city, both those we personally worry about and experience, but also the things we hear from our friends and neighbors, and frankly hear every month when we get together to do this. And if everyone in this room came up with a top 5 list of the things that you worry about with the city, I bet there'd be a lot of similarity. I bet most lists would have traffic, flooding, affordability, concerns about the pace of development. And I mean, those are real things. We hear it all the time. And something we hear here at this meeting is, well, why don't you just stop development? And when we were writing the comprehensive plan, we decided not to ignore that question, but to take it head on. And so we put in the plan that we believe a no growth approach was wrong for a whole lot of reasons. We thought it would exacerbate some of the problems that are on so many people's minds, like housing affordability, business and job growth, public transit, and so forth. So I don't want anyone to misconstrue my comments tonight as thinking that, or suggesting that I think we should put the brakes on new development, because I don't. I think that would be a big mistake. But we also said in that comprehensive plan that we need to do a better job involving the community in the planning process. And I'll read directly from the plan that we approved and City Council adopted a year ago this week. Every engagement activity, community members expressed appreciation for the opportunity to be informed and heard, and shared a desire for increased transparency, communication, and engagement on an ongoing basis. Equity in planning requires that those impacted by decisions are active agents in the decisions being made. It goes on to say, education, transparency, and relationship building will require ongoing and consistent resources to shift from a culture of community engagement to one of community integration. That's from the plan that we adopted a year ago. I've been on this commission for about 3 years, and obviously since we set a record, it's proof that my recollection is accurate, that we've never had, in my time here, an application get the type of feedback that we have gotten tonight. Not even close. Not even close. As of yesterday, we've received 150 written comments in opposition. We have a room full of people here tonight. And we could discuss the content and try to parse out the inaccurate statements, because there were some. I read a number of them that were wrong, or things that just weren't germane to the application itself. But the sheer volume and the intensity of the feedback that we've gotten tells me that we need to slow this down, number one. Number two, it's my understanding that the applicant met with a couple of the neighborhoods, but one of those was the Wagner Terrace neighborhood on Monday night, about 48 hours ago. Let's consider the practical reality of that timing when comments were due yesterday at noon. Any citizen that went to that meeting on Monday night had less than a day to digest what they heard and submit a comment or make plans to be down here at 5 o'clock on a workday. The meeting just should have happened sooner. I wish that, given whatever the time constraints were, I wish that the applicant had withdrawn this to allow more time, but that's not the case, and they have a right to be heard. But not just the practical issue of providing written feedback is important, but it's important for the applicant to have some meaningful back and forth with people like Mr. Hernandez, who point out that even though there is street parking, most of it is pushed into the neighborhood. It's not on that stretch of Mount Pleasant Street, or it's not north of the site on Rutledge. People that live nearby are important. I don't live there anymore, but I used to live pretty close to this. And I have no economic interest in this area whatsoever. I've moved. But living there is fresh in my mind. And at least twice a day, I drove past this on this block, and it's dangerous. It's dangerous. I've witnessed numerous accidents there, and many more near misses on Mount Pleasant Street. When my daughter got her driver's license, we asked her not to drive that stretch because we were concerned about her safety on what's truly a gauntlet. So even if it's not directly within the Planning Commission's purview to consider that type of thing, I want to be on record saying that any redevelopment of this site, whether it's by right with the existing commercial zoning or a part of an effort to rezone the property, the safety of that area needs to be considered both during and after constructions. And like I said, I wish, given the late engagement with the community, I wish that there had been a deferral, but there wasn't. And so I am going to make a motion to deny the request.
Okay, so there's a motion by Mr. Bailey to deny the application. Any further comments, a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Okay.
I live in that neighborhood. I know this intersection very well. I know those two spots, Container Bar and Rutledge Cab Company, very well. And, I have really struggled with this all week because I like mixed-use retail residential spaces. I think they're important for neighborhood spots. I like walkability. I used to live in a larger city. Walkability and accessibility to restaurants and bars and amenities is really important. And so I think that a project like this, just at a smaller scale, could really work and be beneficial. But something this size and with this density, I don't feel like it fits on that corner. It's like crazy enough right there already. I'm not sure if adding all those units would make sense. And Rutledge is really busy right there. I was walking my dog and new baby in the stroller. And I don't even think there's a sidewalk there and people are just flying by. It's just, I don't know. I don't feel like it fits in this space. And so I have to say no to this one.
Yes, ma'am. So there's a motion by Mr. Bailey, a second by Ms. Joyce. Other comments, questions? Ms. Jacobs?
I'm just gonna add to it because I think it's important that we hear everybody. I appreciate everybody coming out tonight, and I particularly appreciate Mr. Zacharian's comments because he gave all the positive aspects, but he looked at it in a way that it just needs to be tweaked one step further. Because, and also Mr. Bello made this point, it's not the mixed use, it's not the commercial, it's the density there. And I personally, I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure that when it went through TRC, they would not get this 150 units on that property. I'm pretty sure that process is gonna bring it down because you're gonna have a BZA request to get grand trees down. That's probably not gonna happen. You gotta manage stormwater on the site. You gotta do a lot of things on that site. So you could ask for 150 and you might see maybe close to the density you'd get with general business. I'm not sure because I'm not the expert, but I wanted to say that because I think it's real important that the people that are here that are concerned about it hear that. Because a developer can go to the city and say, I'm allowed to put this much density on a site, but we have a very intensive process that those developers need to go through, and they usually don't always get that by the time it's all designed out and gone through the regulation. But I'm going to support this denial tonight just because I think it is kind of unprecedented and it needs a thought. But I also feel from what I hear from this developer that he's going to have heard everything, he's going to have read everything, and if he can sharpen his pencil and make the numbers work, I don't know that, I'm just saying if you can, he will come back with a plan that fits our city. And so I'm going to support this.
Specialist Jacobs.
Go ahead. So I can see where this is going, but first, I think we have a love-hate relationship with developers. You need them to develop the units, but then we don't like them to develop the units. And I think that's kind of what I see. And what this also reminds me of, and even though you're right, this is the first time we've actually had written comments of 156, what I see in this is what happened at 310 Broad Street almost 7 years ago, where we could have had a much better project, but now we have luxury apartments that rent for a number that is beyond what I can state today. At this time, it's because that was going to be a true PUD, and more than 200 people, I think, showed up en masse to object to that at zoning and also at planning commission. And right now, as it stands, what we know that on site, if he was to do this by right, is you're looking at 43 apartments and 65 parking spaces. So even if he was to do what is in the envelope today, I think we would still have people say, this is not something I would want to see. This is too much, too fast. And also the other issue I think is in this question is we've almost had this chicken and the egg approach. We're talking, because I know that I remember I had a project that I proposed in MU, and that was almost 7 years ago, right next door. But because of the city plan, it was recommended not to because of the fact that it wasn't a part of the city center. It wasn't a part of this urban core. And so that was why I asked you the question, which is what's the differential? And the differential is now we've got this rapid transit. There wasn't that at the time when I talked to you about that project. And so we are in this kind of chicken and the egg. Which comes first? Does the rapid transit come first or does the development come first? And you're right, plans in the city, when they are proposed, take forever. I can count, most of you probably remember the Spring and Cannon corridor plan. That was presented, I think, proposed in 1997. I graduated from high school in 1997. It didn't become implemented until, I think, maybe 2017, 15? So, yes, it is the cogs are in the wheel and they move slow, and the funding moves slow, and you're looking at that at that pace. But what I do know is not going to happen is that we're never going to be able to outpace the amount of people that are coming into the city. And as much as we talk about the affordable housing component, affordable doesn't necessarily mean low income. It means affordable for somebody who works here. And I'm not saying that 150 can be packed onto the site, but I do know that I think part of the issue is that what you see, we have a gut reaction to. And our gut instinct is to say no, as opposed to saying yes. And I think that is kind of this revert where we're going to have to start stepping back and taking this reverse approach of, well, what are the elements that drive this? It's parking, it's height, it's the feeling that it's all compacted onto the site. And I think we've seen projects that evolve because they just had a blank slate of MU because they've had that time. And, I was a neophyte when I first started on one of these boards and Eddie was there. And people would come in and say, I have 50-foot height. I want a 50-foot building. But it isn't a 50, but you don't get your 50 feet because there's a lot of massaging that happens in front of the public, and there's a lot of massaging that happens in the background. And I think what these comments reflect is that we don't understand the push-pull that is happening in terms of housing, in terms of development, in terms of where you stand as a neighborhood and where those demarcation lines are. And I think that's where I struggle in saying absolutely not on MU, because we're saying 10 years down the road it makes sense. And yeah, he'll probably build this building for the rapid transit will arise. But again, I think we're in this chicken and egg approach, which is which comes first? Does that have to happen for you to be able to do this? Or do we have to wait until it exists, the infrastructure exists? And I think it shows what the city has evolved into, because there are people who are advocating that, and that wasn't even a concept 10 years ago.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. Ms. Lepis.
In the past, there are several points that I think need clarification. And I think we frankly need more information. And I'm speaking mostly for everybody that has shown up tonight. I was very hopeful that maybe this could get not on the agenda tonight, because I think that there's a chance for the developer to communicate better with the people in this room. And I think by bringing it to us and us having to deny it probably is going to make that go a little longer than we would anticipate. I think the developer has done so much to be transparent. There are all the things that Councilman Sackett mentioned that are all problems in this city. And I think that we do need affordable housing. We do need what you're proposing, but we don't want the traffic, even though that's not under our purview. The parking's atrocious. I think that y'all just need to communicate better, and we need to there needs to be a better plan that's presented so that we can throw our support behind it.
Thank you, Ms. Lepis. I was prepared tonight to actually be thinking about this and looking at the agenda and talking to staff, saying, I don't feel really comfortable with this tonight. I didn't think a denial. I probably wasn't leaning towards denial. I was probably leaning towards deferral to talk about if this could be refined and things like that. But it may not be enough time to do that. Unfortunately, we did have the opportunity, which again, there's a motion on the floor in a second, and I see which way the wind's blowing. But there was an opportunity, because we have a meeting within 30 days, to hear this again and still meet our guidelines. But I think the couple issues that were addressed, this workforce housing, people say, well, he may agree to it, he may not do it. There's ways that the city can, if he agrees to it, legally agrees to it, they can put it in writing and I think can bind him to some of those things. I agree, I think, isn't that correct?
Maybe there could be some sort of MOU, I'm not sure. Yeah.
That would come here.
Okay, but I think there's some,
MOU is substantial.
The pricing is very.
Yeah. But I think there's a lot of times there's always the feeling the developers, not always, but sometimes is the bad guy in these things. And I think the developer in the city made some very good points. If this is an area that could maybe handle some more density. I think it's by the interstate, low line. I know the numbers, again, we talk about numbers, we throw numbers out there. This would have to go through have to go to city council, DRB, and things like that if it moved forward. it's obviously not going to move forward. So I'm going to join my commission members in voting against. Again, I saw some merit in deferring, but I hear what they're saying. And there's a motion before by Mr. Bailey, second by Ms. Joyce, to deny the application. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion is denied, is six in favor of the motion to deny and none opposed. Thank you all, appreciate it. I'm sorry?
You probably want to tell the public that it's a recommendation for denial. That doesn't prevent them from going to city council.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, and as I said earlier, I think anything we do is going to go to city council. So that will go to city council if the applicant so chooses to move forward with that. But thank you all. I appreciate everyone coming, appreciate everyone's input, and appreciate everyone's work on this. The next item on the agenda is number 2, the rezonings, 39 Line Street, Cannonball, Ellerville Peninsula, TMS number 459050311, approximately 0.07 acres, special zoning from light industrial LI to mixed use workforce housing MU2 W8. Mr. Morgan.
The map in front of us is the site that is requesting the LI to MU2 workforce housing. It is surrounded by MU2 workforce housing. There is the new the Guild, the Post and Courier Phase 1 development that's right here. And then there are the Line Street development. I don't know what it's being marketed under, but it is under construction over here, and it also has a future phase that's over here on more of the MU2WH property. So this is essentially one of the last remaining LI properties in the area. It is a single house, and we'll go into some of the images here. You can see the aerial of the site. Here we have our comprehensive plan. This is also in our city center. It's, of course, between King and Meeting Street, so all that area is in city center. And the recommendation from the city center standpoint is that, this is an appropriate type of density. The difference between LI and MU one workforce housing for the LI 26 units is 19.4 units an acre, whereas the MU has no density cap on it. There are height limits in this area, and then you've got a street view of the subject property. And it's a single house that would be, I would imagine, have to be retained as part of, its historic elements, historic streetscape here. You can see the entrance to the Guild over here, and the Guild apartments to the rear, and the work that is continuing on the Line Street development to the right. Here is the subject property, again, from the street view, and here's across the street. So our recommendation is for approval of MU2 housing on this site.
Great, thank you, Mr. Is the applicant with us? Yes, sir, come on up. Tell us who you are.
Members of the commission, I'm Chip Morley. I'm here for the owner and the applicant. I just appreciate your time and thank you for the planning department for working with us. The owner's just asking for flexibility. Obviously, I guess we're a little late to the dance with everyone else moving to it around us.
Thank you.
If I can answer any questions, please.
Thank you for being with us,
Thank
sir.
you so
Anyone would like to speak on this application? That being said, the public aspect is closed. Comments, questions, motions? I'll make a motion to approve this application.
I'll second it.
Second by Ms. Harrison. Any other comments? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? 6 in favor, none opposed. Number 3 is property on Southwood Drive, Benwick Hills, Johns Island, TMS number 279-0000018. I think I got enough zeros. Approximately 61.3 acres, requesting zoning from single-family residential SR1, reverse residential DR6. Mr. Morgan.
All right, so this is another one that we have received a lot of comments on. I'll get you the number here.
Yep.
On the online comments. Yeah, let me get this one. I believe we've received 29 comments in opposition on this one.
Great, thank you.
So, to orient you to the site, this is fairly large tract. It's about 60 acres, 61 acres. Here we are looking at the site in the zoning map. It's currently zoned SR1, which is a 4.8 unit an acre designation. The requested zoning is diverse residential, which is DR6, which is a 6 unit per acre designation. Not a huge increase, but definitely an increase. There are some things about this site that I think a lot of people don't realize, and we'll kind of go into this, but first we'll kind of keep orienting you to the site. This is the image of the site's wooded tract. There are a lot of wetlands on the site. I believe somewhere around 40 acres of wetlands on the site. In our comprehensive plan, we show those wetland areas as well as the highland areas, which are in our suburban designation. So essentially from the comp plan standpoint, those highland acres are recommended for a suburban density, which would be from 4 to 8 units an acre. So the DR6 would be right in line with that. I should also point out that I think we've got an image here of the here's a difference in the SR1 and the DR6. And 4.8 units an acre does require 9,000 square foot lots, whereas the 6 units an acre can be in multifamily type buildings and they can be attached. The site is in this area on Johns Island of Maybank Highway that actually is one of the higher areas on Johns Island and actually one of the higher areas in the city. It is in a 17 to 18 foot elevation for most of the site, although there are some areas that are more like 15 or 16. Maybank in general was identified just the other night at our city council, I believe it was on October 11th, when the water plan consultants were appearing before city council, and they pointed to Maybank in this area in particular and said, this is where more density should go because it's some of your higher land. And that's already, just their knowledge of the area. They're saying that, if we're going to grow in the right way, this is an area that more density should go into. And that's in line, of course, with our comprehensive plan that says, 4 to 8 units an acre in this area. Street view images of the site, again, a wooded site. This is from Southwick, heavily wooded site, and more images from Southwick. So again, the comparison, and the applicant provided some of these slides, and the applicant can go through these also, but I do want to show a couple images that they did here. But under the current SR1, at 4.8 units an acre, you could say theoretically 128 units. Under the DR6, 6 units per acre. That is only calculated by Highland acre, only by Highland acre. So it's about 160 units. So you're talking about, 32 units additional by virtue of the zoning ordinance change, something like that. What's important to see here is that the uplands are limited, only about 20 or so acres, and the wetlands intersperse the site in a lot of areas here. And there are areas that you can connect to the applicants' earlier phases of their project at the hamlet on Maybank, which are here, and all developments on Johns Island are designed to connect in all directions unless there's like a wetland or a grove of live oaks or something like that in between. Everything is connected on Johns Island. Our plans required, our codes required. So connectivity is very, very important. The proposal that they have does involve using a piece of land here that is highland, but it may be a little bit narrow to connect to the Southwood Drive area, and then they would have development in these areas as well. What they have looked at, here's a broader view of that connectivity. Here's where they come out to Maybank Highway. They also have connections to the east and west, as well as this connection here, and then up to Southwick. So again, more people have more ways to get around rather than just going up and down Maybank Highway, which has been one of the traffic issues on Johns Island. So what they are proposing is that there would be residential development on just 16.7 acres here. They aren't proposing to do fills other than any crossing, I think, that they need to do here, but I'll let the applicant explain that a little bit more. But I think that that's something that a lot of people in the public do not realize is how much of the site is wet and how it's just difficult to fill wetland areas like that under codes and core permitting and all this kind of stuff. So they're really looking at 16.7 acres here for development. And given the overall recommendations from the comp plan for this site, we feel comfortable with the change from the SR1 to the DR6.
Great, thank you. Mr. Morgan, I'm remiss. I'm going to take a step back very quickly. You said we beginning, I asked you to introduce staff that will be presenting. I didn't.
Okay.
You people work very hard, and I'd like you all to get acknowledged at the beginning. So if you introduce to your staff that's here with us tonight as well.
Well, to my right, Jim Bill, who's our primary contact with all things planning commission, and he makes all these meetings run, he gets all these slides put together, so. Jim is
Answers
here.
all my emails very quickly too, which I appreciate.
That's right. Philip Overcash, he's been with the city almost as long as I have been, and helps us with all our projects as well. And then Philip Piper, our city clerk, who is here. And then Anna Hart will be presenting the subdivision. She's kind of hiding in the back right now.
No.
Oh, and Omar. Yes, Omar is here from our zoning staff as well.
Great, thank you. I appreciate all the work and the hard work you people do, and I usually try to acknowledge at the beginning, so thank you all. Is the applicant with us? Yes, sir. Come on up. Thank you, sir.
Good evening, planning commissioners, and thank you to all from the local community that are here tonight. We appreciate you being here. My name is George Elias with Middleburg Communities. Our regional office is right down the street here on 341 East Bay Street. We're a developer of rental apartments, multifamily, townhome, and single-family cottages, and we own and manage all of our apartments long-term. We're proud of our track record of success. In 2018, our Mosby Ingleside project won the Charleston Apartment Association Diamond Award for Community of the Year. The site we're talking about today, as you heard from Mr. Morgan, is requesting a rezone from SR1 single family residential to DR6 diverse residential. Middleburg is in a unique position to develop this parcel. As he mentioned, we were approved in April of last year by City Council for DR6 zoning on the adjacent parcel, and we plan to break ground on that project later this year. With both parcels and a consistent zoning classification, we believe that we can provide great connectivity and amenity benefits between both projects while minimizing our footprint. As he mentioned, the site consists of about 27 acres of developable uplands with 33 acres of wetlands. Our intent is to only impact wetlands that are required for connectivity between the parcels. Our planned impact on the total 33 acres of wetlands is less than half of an acre. Our current conceptual site plan, Chris, if you switch to the third slide, is again just on those, the next slide please. Thank you. On those 16.7 acres. We did hold a neighborhood meeting last year, and we really appreciate all of the local community and the comments that provided. That's extremely valuable dialogue, and a lot of that went into our planning for this project. We also read through the written comments that were provided by the public prior to this meeting, and we appreciate your input, and we would like to address your questions and comments during this meeting. We do know that additional traffic is a major concern for the residents of John Island, and we certainly understand your concern. Our ownership of that adjacent parcel allows residents access to Maybank Highway through a proposed connection and a future street network, helping to mitigate the impact on Southwick Drive. I think it's important to point out that any other developer that were to develop this parcel would be forced to send all traffic onto Southwick Drive, so we are in a unique position to be able to connect through our Hamlet and Maybank project. Statistics show that apartment renters do own less cars than single-family homes, and so with 85% of our units being 1 and 2 bedrooms, we believe that after we do a traffic impact analysis that we have not done at this time, but that less traffic will be provided by our proposed use than the single-family residential homes that could be built on this project. Another major concern that was brought up was flooding and drainage, which we know is a big problem on Johns Island and all of Charleston. This parcel is in a SPA, a special protection area, so the requirements are very stringent. I think Christopher mentioned these earlier, but when it comes to stormwater management, we have retention sizes that are required. We have a 25% peak flow reduction that's required. All of these standards and requirements do follow the principles of the Dutch dialogue, which many of you mentioned in your comments. So we know these, having designed the Hamlet and Maybank project, and we've gone through that process with the Planning Commission. So we can assure you that our new development is only improving the stormwater situation and will not have any upstream or downstream impacts. As a reminder, we're only planning to impact less than half an acre of the existing wetlands. We believe that our attached townhome product is the best fit for this location. Despite the DR6 zoning allowing additional height, our current plans do not exceed 2 stories. We know how important it is that our project fits in with the local community. And as a developer of the project next door, we have gone through the design review process with our elevations and our homes. So they have been approved, and those are the same facades and materials we'll use on this project as well. Lastly, we focus on walkable communities with connectivity and streetscapes that foster a community feel. We maintain private and public outdoor green spaces, including preserving grand trees, vegetation, protected wetlands, and wildlife habitats. We want Johns Island to continue to be a great place to live. Thank you all for coming out this evening. Middleburg appreciates the community input, and we look forward to continuing this dialogue for our years to come and a long-term commitment to Charleston.
Thank you, sir. Is anyone here who'd like to speak in favor of this? Okay, that being said, anyone like to speak in opposition? And again, we appreciate you all coming. If someone says something, we don't want to get repeated a bunch of times, but come on up. We appreciate your being here. And tell us who you are and where you live. Thank you, sir.
Yes, my name is William Baker, live at 1715 Emmons Road, about a half mile northeast of this planned development. Appreciate everyone's service here on the commission. Appreciate you having us here as opportunity to speak tonight. It was good to hear Director Summerfield state that one of the goals of the Planning Commission is to focus on waterproofing our community. I think speakers that will come after me will show you proof of flooding in this area already that will show that our community there in that area is not waterproof. With all due respect to the Planning Commission and to the developer, I can't believe that we're here talking about upzoning a parcel of land in this area. If anything, the city needs to take a look at ways to decrease the density on this parcel, given the wetlands, the traffic issues, and other factors that will be major impacts to this area. The property, has been stated, has extensive wetlands. The destruction of the trees that will take place, because we're only talking about developing a small parcel of this, the amount of trees that will be taken out, the addition of impervious surface area in driveways, roads, roofs will compound the water issue. The traffic, I can't even get out of my neighborhood now on the Maybank Highway. We're asking for 32 more potential cars, maybe 64 if there's 2 per apartment coming out twice a day. We can't take it. I think a great idea, in my opinion, and I'll be happy to provide the developer an attorney from the Low Country Land Trust. Let's put this land in the Low Country Land Trust. The property owner can get a fantastic tax write-off, and the land can remain protected and provide watershed area for the surrounding developments that's already there, that's already waterlogged, and it's causing flooding now. We need this area there with the wetlands there being protected with not more water added to it, but less. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
My name's Chris Cannon. Chris Cannon. I live at 1 Morton Avenue. However, until recently, I lived at 1572 Catholic Avenue. And Christopher, somebody y'all could put up the neighborhood map here. I'll show you my familiarity with this. Actually, that's fine. We could can you give it a little bit bigger?
I can't make that big,
Right
I'm
there.
sorry.
But just to start with, I lived right here for over 30 years. I still own the property. I actually moved. I inherited my family's home, which I actually moved back a few years ago. I still own this property right here. I lived here for over 20 years. The last 3 years, I spent hours hiking and going around nature walking and whatnot in this area. And talk about wetlands. I mean, at least I got everybody's admitting it's half wetlands. It is. It just depends on the time of the year how wet it is. I mean, sometimes it's more than half that's wetlands, if you really honest with it, because the water's really hot. In this neighborhood right here, this is what is actually known as the old Fennel Hills neighborhood. This area right here was a VHA development from the late 1950s. And all little single family houses on a third of half-acre lots. In the last 10 years, this entire area over here, which is totally wooded, absolutely 100% wooded, has been developed. It's a site called Fenwick Woods, which is kind of funny because They came in and clear cut the entire area. There were very few grand trees on this property because there was no tomato farm. And so they came in and were able to clear cut this entire area and virtually no trees there were. This area right here, Brownswood Road right over here. There were a few houses along here. All this has been sold and turned into single family residences. This area back here is completely developed now. This is the only place in this entire area that is still undeveloped. I actually had I'm speaking now on behalf of the Johnstown Council. Any of you on the planning commission who are not familiar with our group, we are the longest established civic group on Johnstown. We've been there for over 20 years. I was the chairman for over 15 years. Some of the folks who have been on the planning commission are familiar with me from being here for other things before. We're the only public civic group on Johnstown that has public meetings on a regular basis. We voted unanimously to oppose this rezoning. And two reasons. I actually have tried in the last 2 years to get Open Land Trust and the Greenbelt Advisory to get some interest in this land. And at the time, both of them said they were not able. I'm actually looking at going back to them to see if there's any way they can work with it now. At the time, they were not capable of being able to deal with that particular piece of property. Plus, I got the idea from them that they kind of felt because of the extensive wetlands in there that might prevent it from being developed in the first place. And I'm going to try to go back myself, but the fact is we have already been trying to see if we can get interest in doing some of this to try to preserve the land. The other thing is that it is zoned single-family residence. Everything in that entire area, every bit of that development there is all single-family residence. And there's absolutely no excuse in the world, I don't care how much land you can get, there's no excuse in the world to upgrade that to anything other than single-family residential. If we could stop that, it would be wonderful, but absolutely no sense whatsoever in that being developed as any way but single-family residential.
Thank you. Thank you for your many years of service to Johns Island too, sir. Yes, sir. Come on up.
Hi, my name is David Henderson. I live at 1583 Southwick Drive, which is right there. The proposed property being developed is kind of scary, but I want to talk, people are going to talk about flooding, people are going to talk about everything else. I want to talk about safety. Johns Island, is split with Maybank and then Brownswood on this side. This route right here takes you out to Main Road and 17 and Main. Okay, they're showing that there are going to be exits out to Maybank here. Right now, Southwick is the only one that goes from Maybank to Brownswood. When I moved out to this home 9.5 years ago, it wasn't a big deal. But now, there's nothing but new subdivisions on Brownswood Road. And this is the cut through. And the amount of cars that go down this road is very, very scary. And the speed that they go down this road right here is posted at 35, and it's very, very common to see 50, 55 on that road. The development says that they are going to put an output here, which means people are going to be using this cut through to get to Brownswood, to get out to Main, get to 17. The reason I'm talking about danger is this is a picture of a car in a ditch directly across the street from me. This is not uncommon. I have gone up and fished somebody out of their car on its side. We've had drunks come through there and just hit it so hard, I really don't know how they haven't been killed. I just feel that the amount of more traffic that's going to be coming onto Southwick itself is going to be dangerous. I'm not even talking about what's going on Maybank, because that's brutal as it is. And this would make it even worse.
Thank you. Thank you for coming, sir. Yes, sir.
My name is Chris Bigley, local entrepreneur. My house is, it's been in all your pictures. My backyard backs up to where they want to develop. And what I want to start with is, I've heard a common theme tonight of communication with the community. I know the developer states they met with us a year ago. I don't know what community they met with. Me and all my neighbors that live there had no idea this was coming until we saw a sign the other day that said they want to do this. No communication at all. And I'm sorry, I'm going to try to calm down a little bit because that gets me a little worked up. So that's one big problem I've got. Another thing is, I know they're saying they want to keep it to 2 stories, but it's the community for apartments. I don't know. It just happened overnight to us. I know you've got 30 votes against it on Facebook. most of us don't have Facebook, but we'll sign up for it and vote against it if you need us to. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you for coming, sir. Yes, ma'am. Come on up.
Hey, how are y'all doing? So I had a lot of comments, but some people mentioned them, so I'm going to do my best to be abbreviated.
Yes, ma'am. Just tell us who you are.
My
and
name
address.
is Hannah Giddens. I own property on Southwick Drive. It's my primary residence, 1774. In fact, I own an original home from the original Fenwick Hills development. I am a registered voter here. In my house is annexed into the city of Charleston, unlike some on that street. I oppose the rezoning request from SR1 to DR6. I understand that the developer has tried to give us assurances that they're going to use minimal use and not scale up with this DR6 like they could, but they could if they wanted. If we're talking about a waterproof community, which was mentioned earlier, why are we even having this discussion? 40 acres of wetlands, and at what time of year? Water level. When it rains a lot, I can guarantee you it's more than that. Already, our drainage has been affected by recent development in the area. This is only going to exacerbate that, even though the developer says that they will be using a minimal amount of that land. Not to mention, with the DR6 zoning, you could have duplexes, triplexes, more buildings, more impervious surfaces that are really going to affect the individuals to the north of the parcel, but really Southwick as a whole. Regarding traffic and infrastructure, we heard a lot earlier about transportation and land use, like working together. This is an example of that not working together. I walk my dog every day, so some of y'all might see me, hey, every day along Southwick. I don't have a fence. I'm 2 houses from the Habitat for Humanity store on Maybank. All right, that is so scary and so dangerous, and people flying around this blind curve. Now, this developer is saying that he's going to make a cut through. As somebody previously mentioned, you're going to be inviting more cars. People literally do 80 and drag race this thing in the middle of the night, which brings up another point. We have a stop sign, not a stop light. We have a brand new strip mall across the street and still no stoplight. You have people trying to turn left, people trying to go straight. It is a mess. People have accidents. My neighbor has his cats killed regularly. My dog almost got hit by a car yesterday. And one last thing, 2 things. I just found out about this last night to echo, a previous comment. 0 communication. Yeah, I'm not active on the Facebook in the Johns Island community. 0 notice, except for my lovely neighbor Pete told me on my front porch at about 5 p.m. Which brings up my last point. We are a community and we are a neighborhood. We might not look traditional, but we are Fenwick Hills. And I heard a couple of comments earlier that the city of Charleston doesn't want to change the character of residential neighborhoods. Going from single family homes and upzoning to, what could potentially be there. I'm not going to sit here and listen to this developer say, well, we're the best of your options. No, the best of our options is not upzoning this. Thank you. I oppose this.
Thank you for coming, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Come on up.
Hi, my name is Karen Buckley. I'm a registered voter. I live at 1578 Southwick, which is right here. I live in the meat of the cold. I've been there for 3 years. I'm aware of where I bought property. We knew the area. We were not blind going into it. We knew that it was a busy road going from Brownswood to Maybank. Fine. In the 3 years we've owned this home, we have had 8 vehicles in our ditches. We've had 3 near misses, and not a single arrest has happened. We have abandoned vehicles. We have asked for and received very little police monitoring. They are actually there this week. They are down in the meat of the matter where there's no homes. I mean, monitoring not the curves. Just this morning, 5:30 in the morning, we thought a car was going in the ditch. I don't know if you know, when you speed around a corner, it rolls your tires. That wakes every single person up. We chose to live there. Fine. That is not 35 miles an hour.
we are getting no cooperation as far as monitoring on our end. So it's just, we call it the Southwick Speedway. It's very passionate. We have a 18-month-old that lives right next door. We have a 2-year-old who lives across the street next to Dave, which that entire 2 properties floods from the ditch to their front doors. I have a picture of the Painswick Road that they just recently tarred to help with land development. This is the outcome of the ditch that they cleaned up, and that's just the road. Half of the road disappears. 2 people can't get out of their homes on that road. This is of the fixed property. I live 2 houses down the road. The rest of these people live just beyond that. Everything trickles down. Here, nothing trickles anywhere into our homes. I just think that more development needs a better plan and better drainage. And the speeding thing. Somebody needs to die. And I don't want it to be the 18-month-old. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you.
My name is Lori Peterson. I live at 3275 Dunwick Drive. I am a residential and commercial real estate agent. I'm also on the board for Fenwick Woods. I'm not speaking on behalf, but I've heard quite a lot of comments from the community as well. Can we please go back to the map where you showed the connection to the other neighborhoods? Thank you. What is your next parallel to Southwick Drive right here? I have 2-year-old twins, and someone mentioned traffic coming from Maine, not to mention the traffic coming from River. One of my twins is autistic, severe autism, and that's a huge problem. So it's already a lot of cars flying down Dunwick to come here to Southwick because this is a thoroughfare, or traffic coming from River, traffic coming from Maine, going down Brownswood and funneling into Maybank. There is a 2-way stop sign on Southwick and Maybank. However, it's very difficult right now to just get onto Maybank because Maybank is not stopping. And now we do have that strip mall across the way, which has created a lot of danger. I've seen a lot of vehicles almost get hit in the short period of time that it's really been functioning as a strip mall. So I'm just curious, as it being a highway, is there going to be a light put in? How many deaths are going to need to happen before that is created as an opportunity, or at least a 4-way stop? Another thing too, I made notes, so don't forget anything. There's no sidewalks for pedestrians. It would be great if there's at least talk about a bike lane, just making it a little bit easier for people to not have to use vehicles. It's really their only option right now to get anywhere. And also, you mentioned that they will not be filling any of the wetlands, but how do we know that for sure? Once this is rezoned and we have more traffic coming through the area, when is that point where they're not able to come back later and say, hey, you know what, we actually do want to fill a good portion of this, because it is 67% wetlands, and I'm concerned about the flooding as well. And I think that was about it. I just don't want to see a repeat of Shadow Moss Plantation where we had to buy 9 homes and 32 condos. City tax dollars going to waste. So.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for coming. Appreciate it. Yes, sir.
My name is Pete Salvo. I live at 1780 Southwick Drive. I'm a 30-year veteran of the Charleston Fire Department. And again, I'm going to hit on the traffic too. This has got to stop. Too many cars on that road. I get up every morning. The school bus stops in front of my house. I have seen over and over again cars running the stop sign on the school bus as kids are standing out on the road trying to load up on this bus. The Southwick Drive, I call it Southwick Autobahn because that's what it is, okay? I called the sheriff's department. They come out there one day. In an hour, this guy wrote 28 tickets in an hour for speeders. This road is nothing but a drag race. And if you had more cars out there, I don't care how many less cars you think you're going to have out there, you're going to have more cars out there running the school bus stop signs. You're going to have more people putting their life in danger. I work for Habitat now, and our parking lot is across the street. People come down Southwick Drive flying as people are trying to cross the street, thinking that these cars are going to stop for them. These cars ain't stopping, they speeding up. And another problem we have, Southwick and Maybank, that is a death trap. It's like Hannah said. Hannah's my neighbor. It's like she said, we don't have a stoplight out there. What we have out there is a stop sign. All day long you hear car horns blowing. People trying to get out. People trying to get in. People getting run over out there. I don't know if y'all know, years ago, an 8-year-old boy got killed out there in a car accident. A few years back, an elderly lady got killed in a car accident. Okay? It's just been, and those are fatalities, but there's been wreck after wreck after wreck out there. And I'm going to tell you, we can't afford to have apartments put out there, affordable housing as we call it, and more people moving in. Single family residence would be great on that stretch of land. But let me tell you, the death toll is 2 people so far. And that's too many. And eventually, these kids out there waiting on a school bus, one of them are going to get hit. You know. And then, you know, you're going to look at it and say, oh, well, somebody got run over, a kid got run over. You know. And we're going to say, well, it wasn't my kid. Could it have been prevented? Yeah, it could have been prevented. I'm going to ask you to oppose this thing. We don't need this. We do not need any more cars out there on that Southwick Autobahn. Okay? I thank you for your time. Thank you very much.
Mr. Salvo. Appreciate you coming. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Bruce Oak. I live at 1617 Southwick. How many people are here from Johns Island right now? I know a bunch left. How many went to the meeting last year with the developer?
I didn't know.
We knew nothing about the meeting. I don't know what that was all about. And it just baffles me you didn't do a traffic impact analysis yet? Didn't you tell us that?
Sir, if you'd address us, and
Oh,
we'll
I'm
get
sorry.
No, we're gonna get answers from him. He's gonna have a chance to
Well,
answer.
I'm
So I
surprised that
appreciate
the
it. Thank you.
developer didn't have a traffic impact analysis done yet.
Yes, sir.
Because with extra cars in there, like everybody's talking about the traffic, but are you familiar with the intersection we're talking about at
Yes, sir.
Southwick and Maybank?
Yes, sir.
Well, you know, the complex across the street, which is very busy, there's a sports bar and ice cream place. They exit right at into the crossroad, and it's very dangerous. You don't know if the guy's coming across, if they're turning, then you got to look left and right, and somebody is going to get killed there. I don't have a whole lot to say other than everything was covered that I wanted to talk
We
about.
appreciate you coming too, Mr.
I know your mission is to improve the quality of life for your citizens. And I feel that with the multi-family development there, SR1 is fine. Single homes, like the whole neighborhood, is fine, but I just think it's not going to improve. I know my life, and probably nobody here's the life, is going to be improved. Then everything talked about the flooding, but I just would like to say that on Southwick, on the Wicks, I don't know if you noticed the streets, like they all go up. Well, I walk that every day, and it's downhill. So since they started developing at the top and over to the right, all that extra development forces the water to come down to Southwick now. And the last time we had heavy rain, the first time I seen Southwick actually flood. And I don't think this is gonna help that situation, so.
Thank you for coming too, sir. We
I
hear you.
oppose it, and I hope you do too. Thank you.
Thank you for coming, sir. Yes, sir.
Glory, and I'm sticking to it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Hey, good evening. My name is Aaron Cohen. I live on 3197 Dunwick Drive. It's just right outside of the map area here. Everyone's kind of touched on some of the points I had, but just to bring up two other things is this is the first time that I've seen the map like this kind of showing where they're wanting to do that. So it's interesting. It changes kind of the, I think, mindset a little bit if everyone else was able to see this too, aside from kind of what came up on Facebook a couple of days ago, I think it was. But the first thing I noticed with this is that it takes this where the current yellow is, where they're building the apartment complexes now. It's just going to kind of make like an outshoot for them to come out of the apartment complex, and they can't turn on to Maybank. They're going to go out that way, and that's going to flood more people into Southwick. And then also the other communities that have gone up off of Maybank, they don't interfere with the other neighborhoods. They dump out on the Maybank, and if there's traffic for them trying to get out of the apartment complexes, then that's kind of on them. And now you're introducing these other people that are going to be now affecting the rest of the community around it as well. And then the other point I have, I forgot it was now. Yeah, the community. I mean, everyone who's talked up here, I recognize their faces. We drive careful in our neighborhood. We know who each other are. And if you leave it as a single family residences, maybe they could also become part of the community where we can all work together. People will drive safe and be careful. And if you have this as multifamily residence or apartment complexes, usually those people are only there for a couple of years at a time. Maybe they don't get involved with their community. So I feel like it would be a negative impact on the surrounding streets and communities to have it, routed this way and to have those people potentially coming from the apartment complexes out in Southwick, but also not having to incorporate people as this SR1, having them as part of the community as well around this.
Thank you for coming, sir. Thank you. Yes, sir.
David Studi, I live at 1636 Fishbone Drive. My property backs up to Southwick Drive and is directly across the street from this proposed development. I would like to start with a question. What is the maximum unit or story height of DR6?
Mr. Morgan?
How many stories is the max stories you can put on DR6?
We'll get you that answer. You keep going, I'm gonna get you that answer.
Secondly, I would just like to echo earlier comments. We learned about this, my wife and I learned about this Monday evening. Someone did post a zoning sign or took a picture of the zoning sign that I assume was on Southwick. I've not seen it. I've not seen one zoning sign on Southwick. Again, we're what, 24, 36 hours in. And evidently there's a decision that's supposed to be made. I don't feel like we as the community have had any time to absorb any of this. I've got a ton of questions for the developer. Story height is one, units, buffer zones, environmental impact studies. I don't know if any of this has been done. And I would like to respectfully request that this be deferred and give the community time to learn more about it and meet with the developer. I don't know anything about this meeting that was supposed to take place last year. Again, we're, as the surrounding community, I think we're a couple of days in. It's way too premature for any decisions to be made. And I think if any decisions are made, I won't go there.
Thank you for coming.
Can I get that answer to that question?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry. Mr. Morgan?
So SR1 is 2.5 story height limit and DR6 is a 3-story height limit. 35 feet for SR1 and 2.5 stories and 50 feet and 3 stories for DR6.
So what's going to keep this developer from coming back after his zoning is approved and say, oh, well, by the way, we want to go 3 stories instead of 2?
I mean, 3 stories is allowed.
You need to deny this.
Thank you, sir. And we're gonna, hopefully the developers can answer some of the other questions you brought up. So thank you, appreciate it. Yes, sir.
Good evening. John's Logo, 5528 Frisco Lane with the Johns Island Task Force. I've got 3 points. First, this is an upzoning request, not a budget request. So everything the developer said about only filling in a half an acre of wetlands, or building only the 2.5 acres, or only developing certain portions of the property, grain of salt, right? We know ton of PUD, so whatever he says doesn't matter. Second, you've heard about all the traffic issues. We know the developer will do a traffic study, and we all know what the answer is, because they always come out the same way. It does not impact traffic. We've already heard here, though, the traffic is past the tipping point. So obviously it's going to impact the traffic, despite what we know it's going to say anyway. And third, you know, if you look at the map there, you have to ask yourself, why is this the last large parcel in this area not developed? And it's on highland too. You know, where Dutch dialogue says we should develop. And the reason, of course, is all the wetlands. As you saw in the picture, they bisect the parcel. The only way to develop this parcel is to fill in wetlands. That is absolutely the only way to do it. So if you were to approve this, you are basically approving the filling in of wetlands on Johns Island, the exact same thing that the Dutch dialogue says don't do. So Johns Island Task Force recommends that you disapprove this application.
Thank you for your service and thank you for being here. Yes, sir. Anyone else? If not, we'd ask the applicant to address concerns.
First of all, we'd like to thank everyone for their comments this evening. They're certainly important to us. One thing I want to address first off is transparency. Middleburg prides ourselves in transparency, so I definitely want to talk about communication. We did send letters to over 1,500 letters last year to a 500-foot radius of the project. That being said, we are happy to hold an additional neighborhood meeting. I've heard a lot of comments here, and I want to make sure that we are allowing everyone the opportunity to communicate with us. So between now and a potential city council meeting, we would be happy to hold an additional neighborhood meeting to talk more about these issues. And we do have a meeting with city council, Councilmember Brady, planned for next week to talk about this project as well. When it comes to wetlands, again, this is a 61-acre site. We're only proposing development on less than 17 of those acres. 33 acres of those are wetlands, plus we're actually voluntarily offering to preserve about 10 acres of developable acreage as well, which I believe is something that a single-family residential developer would not have the ability to do. And that is, again, our impact of less than a half an acre. We have done a wetland study on the site, and we do have a JD from the Army Corps, especially with the SPA requirements. There's additional size of retention ponds, so I know people talked about flooding beyond the existing wetlands. There are additional buffers and additional sizing that's required based on that SPA, and that will all be taken into account on this project. We also did an environmental phase 1 on the site as well to look at any endangered species and wildlife habitats. Traffic is obviously something that's been brought up a number of times, and I appreciate all the comments. We plan, and it's not required that you do a traffic impact analysis prior, but we do plan to do a traffic impact analysis after this. We have done one for our Hamlet project in the general vicinity, and so we took some of those findings from that in planning our project here. But I can assure you that based on that traffic impact analysis, we will not be lowering the level of service at any of the existing roads. That is a requirement. So anything that they propose in terms of turn lanes or access, we will be required to follow those. So we can assure you that that'll be the case. The city does preach connectivity. We believe this is a prime site for connectivity. When you add additional roads and additional ways to get from one place to another, it actually statistically alleviates traffic on the rest of the surrounding roads. So we do believe that our connection point through the Hamlet project and the connectivity provided does actually end up alleviating, in addition to our proposed use and the number of cars, that the impact to the traffic will be much less than the existing zoning. Also just want to clarify that these are not apartment complexes. These are, our Hamlet project is a mix of cottages and townhomes, and this what we're proposing is a strictly townhome project. 2 stories. We have prototypes, as I said, that have been approved by the design review board, and our intent is to follow those same. We did also have a sketch plan review prior to this project where we did share a conceptual site plan. So that has been seen by 5 members of the community. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Thank you. That'll close the public aspect of this. Commission members, questions, comments, motions? Look like you're about to jump in. You go ahead.
I have a question, just maybe this is for planning, but I know that the recommendation was for approval, correct? And isn't, I mean, I know I'm still new, but in the future land use plan, I always felt like we wanted to limit density near these wetland districts, and why was it the recommendation to add more density than what would be permitted right now
With
for
SR?
this? So for SR1.
So again, we don't have full, in this map, this is from the comprehensive plan, we don't have full delineation of the wetlands. This is, the best we had available on this. It sounds like the applicants have a little bit more clear delineation at this point. But what the plan was identifying is that, yes, there are wetland areas in here, and typically those are not developed. And the areas that were highland were the areas that were identified for the suburban type of densities, which are 4 to 8 units an acre. And so we knew that they don't get density off the wetlands that are on the site. Once they have all that delineated, they have to show us that information, and that's how they calculate the density that can be on the site. I think even with this image, we realized that there was going to have to be a tiny bit of fill to have the connectivity that is typically desired. There are a number of places around the Maven corridor on Johns Island that we may have to have a tiny little fill of wetlands so we can get some of that connectivity because the wetlands intersperse so much stuff. The applicant, I think, can talk a little bit more about what the process is for filling wetlands. I think it is, if you're doing more than a half acre, it is quite burdensome, but I don't know all the particulars. If you're doing less than half an acre, that's what they call a nationwide permit, and those typically can go through more easily, and it sounds like that's what they are working on for this site.
I have a question.
Ms. Harrison.
I recall us doing the approval on this for the DR, doing the diversified residential on the hamlet. And part of that is because I think we've got townhomes where in the SR1 category you cannot have the attached building. So now one other question I did have is that in this area are people allowed to have ADUs as well? Our current ADU ordinance would
Only
they?
if they had individual lots,
Mhm.
and I don't think that is the plan of the developer.
No, not over here, but I'm just saying in an SR1 zoning, would you be able to have an ADU?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
So essentially, you could almost have 2 dwelling units
Yes.
on a
Current zone.
on a current zoning. So what we're looking at is, even though but it's electing, like someone could elect to do that. All right. So essentially, what we're looking at is 2 units in a DR, 2 units attached, 2 units basically on almost on an individual lot size, theoretically, if they were going to do DR6.
Everybody would do that, but yes, they could.
No, if they were staying SR1 is what you mean to say.
Yes.
Yes.
It remained the same.
Could you put up that slide that shows the difference between the density? Because I think
4.8 and 6.
Commissioner.
4.8 for SR1.
Yeah, well, no, I mean the one where you showed the comparison between the two for this lot. You had a slide that showed it just specifically for this application.
I think you keep
Yeah, right here, okay. I think Commissioner Harrison makes a great point in the sense that we're looking at, if I did my math right, only 32 units. Everybody here says they're completely comfortable with SR1 development, but I think in reality, if somebody was starting to build on this by right, there would be people that would be upset with any development on this land, because I've heard from the group that they're looking at trying to get this into the land trust. So I think any development on this site is heartburn. But with our current ADU situation, I think everybody's trying to throw up an ADU as fast as they can, and I think that this would happen here. So you could see 128 units double to, or even half of that would get you over the units proposed by DR6 zoning. And one thing that we've talked about a lot is that we need a diversity of housing. When you build attached homes and you build a little bit of density, not a lot, not an apartment complex, but a little bit of density, you give somebody the opportunity to rent or buy something that's affordable. I'm not talking affordable housing in general, I'm just talking about somebody who's a single person starting out who may have a decent salary, who doesn't want a yard. It's called the missing middle. And what we do with zoning right now, with all this SR1, is we don't allow for that. We essentially exclude a lot of people from owning or renting because we don't give any kind of diversity of housing. We did see this Middleburg project in our other rezoning and what they plan to do, and it does exactly that. Now what, as a commissioner, and I've heard the comment from my commissioner to my left, we would love to see this in a PUD to where it could be committed to what you're saying. Because we also respect the fact that we could give you the DR6 zoning. You've said all kinds of nice things to us tonight. And then when you get in there with your pencil and realize you can't commit to what you say you're going to commit to, we've given you your zoning and you do what you can do. Although that doesn't seem to be the case that you've done with your other project. So I'm sitting here listening to a lot of people be very concerned for the same reasons that the previous application was concerned, but at the same time, I don't see the same problem here. So I'm going to make a motion to approve this.
Well, can I just make a comment? And really, I don't know really how I'm going to vote right now, but we're looking at 4.8 units per acre under SR1, and that's assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, a 9,000 square foot lot on an unusual piece of property that there's no way that they're going to be able to get 9,000 square foot lots on the highland on this if left SR1. And this isn't a comment to encourage you to go to DR6. It's just understanding that it's not going to have 128 lots on this property. It's just not. I mean, Christopher,
It would be tough with the 9,000 square foot lots. It depends on the road size and the configuration and.
The 160 units will probably be tough too.
Well, neither of that. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that, you know, on DR6 allows more flexibility. I wish there was something in between that you know we could do that would encourage some, you know, cottages like you were discussing and some townhouses and something that is more residential and not a townhouse. But we need the detached and attached townhouses to get that missing middle that we're looking at, but not at the expense of the neighbors and not at the expense of the people that feel as strongly as they do. So, I mean, it's a conundrum over here because it's not going to be developed as a single family residential. And obviously everybody here would love to see that happen. But that's not fair to the owner of the property. I mean, they have a right to do on their property what they can do. And it doesn't need to be encouraged by us rezoning it. So, and I'm listening to the Johns Island Task Force and their recommendations. I just wish, again, I'm going to say that there was more communication.
Right.
It appears that last year was a long time and none of these people have actually heard it.
Right.
And Mr. Whalen is, you know, he's right there. He knows exactly about communication. He's probably a master at it. I wish that they had more time to communicate to the public. And to the neighborhood.
Right.
So I just wanted to throw that out.
Yep.
It's not going to be 128 lots, no matter.
And it's not going to be 160.
Just to the point, the reason why I was asking that is because I was trying to figure. I was looking at holistically. You have your homeowners who live in this area that have properties that are zoned SR1 that by our ADU ordinance are allowed to add an additional ADU, which means that there could be possibly 2 units on a single lot, regardless of how big the lot is. The ADU allows you to have an additional unit. So when we're talking about the concept of density, it is we are saying we want you to do something on your SR1. We want to encourage that, but here this person is saying we just are already going to build it. We're going to build that missing middle, and so I was trying to figure out if they were starting out brand new as a whole development of SR1, what would that matrix look like today with our ADU ordinance? I like our ADU ordinance. I'm just saying that there's this ability that you have these 850 square feet buildings, which is essentially a one-bedroom apartment, that can go on these individual lots right now. And so I don't think I think when you look at it in that holistic way, you start to see where that density is going to start matching what is being proposed.
But Eric, on that, you can't really look at individual single-family construction versus density of a townhouse where they're attached. I mean, conceivably, it's going to be way too expensive to do anything like that. And I don't think we've ever approved a subdivision with the idea that we're going to have some ADUs added to the, have we? Has that ever been approved?
Not at this point, because ADUs haven't been allowed in the city until in the last year.
Right, but we haven't had one in the last year.
Yeah, there are PUDs that have ADUs
Right.
that talk about ADUs,
But not SR1,
like
not
SR1, we haven't seen anything that they identified ADUs on the site.
All right, thank you. So there's a motion by Ms. Jacobs. Mr. Bailey, did you have something that looked like you was?
I'm struggling because when I was appointed to this commission, there were two things I said I wouldn't do on Johns Island. I wouldn't vote in favor of anything outside the urban growth boundary, and I wouldn't vote for anything that I thought might impact wetlands and cause more flooding. There's some evidence that maybe this is high, or there's portions of it that are high, and I feel like my choice is to go against my own guiding principle and hope that they do the plan that's on the screen, or take the easy route and just vote no. I wish it were a PUD so that we could really dial it in and control it, and not have to hope that the developer delivers what they say. So I'm going to vote no, but I might be in the minority.
So there's a motion, there's no second to the motion, so we're willing to accept another motion. I think a couple of things we have that we know of, so here, that people feel that it's not enough correspondence. A couple of things that could happen, we could defer it, but that's only the next month legally. The applicant could withdraw it, he could defer it, which means he'd have a chance to meet with people and try to resolve some of the issues. That's his choice, not ours. Or we can deny it, we can approve. So there's a motion, there's no second I hear on the motion to approve.
Who made the motion?
I made
Ms.
the motion.
Jacobs. So there's no second on that motion. Is there another motion? Substitute motion?
I would make a motion to defer, because I think by giving them that time, they have a decision to make about withdrawing their application or trying to meet with the neighborhood. And I think a motion for deferral.
Right, and I'm gonna second that motion, and I say that because I hate to make, I hate to do that only because I hate to kick the can down the road and we hear it again, but it may be worth that. And next month, we may turn it down, we may support it, but again, it gives an opportunity for these people to be heard, listen, at least hopefully that developer hears us, meets with these people, at least answers some of the concerns we have. 30 days, because we do meet, I think it meets the guidelines. We've got 4 weeks from today. Yes, less than 30 days, we'll meet again, so I'll second that motion. Ms. Harrison made a motion to defer, I'll second it. Other comments, questions? All in favor of the motion to defer, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? There's 6 in favor of deferral, none opposed, so Harris, you'll be back in less than 30 days, so thank you. Next item up. Thank you. Next item on the agenda. I hope you hear us. We hope there's an opportunity for you to meet with these folks. So, next item on the agenda is subdivision. Property on Teresa Drive, Bel Air, James Island, TMS number 4241-0000030, approximately 2.6 acres. Request approval of subdivision concept plan for 16 townhome units, zone single family and 2 family residence. If y'all could move out to the outside, we appreciate it. Thank you. And sing a two-family STR and diverse residential DR1. Ms. Hart, you see, I got you right off the bat. Thank you.
I haven't been here in a while.
I know we missed you.
Me either.
Go ahead, Ms. Harvey, go ahead.
Okay, so this is a property on Teresa Drive. The applicant is requesting a subdivision concept plan approval for 2.63 acres on Teresa Drive in Ben's Island. The project will subdivide the parcel into 8 lots. So there's your Teresa Drive, and this is the connector. Let's see, some pictures, lovely pictures. Okay. The project will subdivide the parcel into 8 lots, 6 one-family attached lots along Teresa Drive, 1 HOA parcel that will allow access to all the lots, and 1 multifamily lot access from Teresa Drive, for a total of 16 townhome units, but a total of 8 lots. There are wetlands on the parcel. Wetlands are not proposed to be impacted by this subdivision. A 50-foot highway buffer, a 40-foot OCR and critical line buffer, and a 10-foot building setback are shown on the plans. This property is on STR and DR1, so single and two-family residential in the front and diverse residential in the rear. Both zoning districts allow for single-family detached and attached residential units. The surrounding parcels contain the same single-family detached and attached. So here we go with the concept plan. The planning commission has 60 days to act, and this is just a concept plan. If the concept plan is approved, it has to come back to TRC for preliminary plat. And in this case, I believe it's going to be a site plan. So it was reviewed by TRC 3 times, and it has determined that the concept plan for the subdivision has met the minimum standards required to move forward in the review process, and the staff recommendation is for approval.
Thank you, ma'am. Is the applicant here? I'm assuming that's you, sir.
Good evening, Bill Eubanks, SGA&W. Y'all may remember a year or so ago, this project came before y'all for a change in the split zoning. And that was just to kind of move that line just a little bit. And we've been going through the process. We've been going through TRC. We're going to be going through DRB for this. And this is simply to subdivide the 6 townhouse lots that will front Teresa Drive so that those are fee simple lots. That's basically what we're asking.
Thank you, Mr. Eubank. Is anyone here like to speak on this? If not, that'll close the public aspect. Motions, comments?
I'll move for approval.
Ms. Sun,
I'll
let's move
Okay.
for approval. Ms. Jacobs, seconds.
But we had 1 letter in opposition. We need to put that in the record.
Thank you for that, Ms. Jacobs.
But I believe that letter was misunderstanding where we were in the process.
There was 1 letter of opposition, just for the record, and I think that's important to know for the record. There's a motion by Ms. Lefferts, second by Ms. Jacobs. Any other comments, questions? If not, all in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye. Anyone opposed? That's 6 in favor, none opposed. Thank you all. Next item on the agenda. Thank you, Ms. Eubanks. Next item is ordinance amendment number 1 to amend Article 3.2, Old City Historic District Review Corridor Protection, Section 64-306A, Parenthesis 2.5 of Chapter 54 of the Code of the City of Charleston zoning ordinance to allow more flexibility for height for principal buildings within a B or AE flood zone. Mr. Morgan.
Okay. I hope that Mr. Batchelor was going to be able to be with us for this one, but he is not.
Doesn't look like there's a lot of people to speak.
Yeah. But this is a follow-up on the ordinance that was before you all. This started to gain
I think what we deferred last month. Is that?
Yes, you deferred it. It started to gain some momentum to be created for a couple of reasons. First off, for houses that are being raised, existing houses that are being raised, to allow people to use that portion under their house for, car parking, and it doesn't count as a story for them, okay? And we didn't have a similar provision for single family. So, and diverse residential too. And so we felt like that was important. And then, knowing that areas of the west side had such low elevations, that there was going to be such amount of elevation between the land grade level and the house itself, we felt like there should be an opportunity for people to make better use of that space and it not count against them in a story standpoint. So that is where the impetus of the ordinance came from. It's a pretty simple ordinance. It says that, that if you are in a VE or AE zone on the flood insurance rate now and have 2 stories over a first floor structure that exceeds 6 feet in height, provided the first floor elevation does not exceed the elevation required to meet FEMA and city freeboard requirements, that you can have 2 stories over that of, your space and still fit within the 2.5 story district. So that is the impetus of the ordinance.
Great.
And I'm happy to try to answer your question.
And is anyone out there would like to speak on this ordinance? Don't jump together all at once, anyway. Okay, that'll close the public aspect for this.
I have a question.
I knew you did. You go ahead, Ms. Orr.
We had a long lecture from a developer last meeting with material and pictures and slides and numbers and everything. And one thing that was brought up, because I remember Commissioner Angie Johnson was mentioning this too, is there's international building codes that apply in here for parking under a structure. And you just can't get it to where you can get the car in. You got to get it to a code, especially in new construction. And where I'm having a slight heartburn is that when it says, provided the first floor elevation does not exceed the elevation required to meet FEMA and city freeboard. And if that elevation required to meet FEMA and freeboard is underneath that building code for parking, yes, you might be able to put a car under there, but they can't build it new and do that. So what we've done is we've said they can put it up. Let's just say all the calculation gives them 7 feet and the building code is 8 feet, that they're going to lose a story just for a foot. And I'm having a little heartburn with that because I think that's just not fair to people that are trying to infill. And we're going to elevation-based zoning. We're trying to do the right thing in the west side. But, we might be losing it by a foot or two with this ordinance.
I hear Ms. Jacobs, and I think that everything that was said by the developer may not be 100% accurate. Or was it?
Correct. He
So-
kept referencing, for instance, a 40-foot height limit, which has nothing to do with the 2.5 story
I'm not talking
district.
about that. I'm talking about the
Okay.
building code for parking under the structure.
And what he was saying about the 6'8" clearance, that probably is correct. I don't know the building code, and we weren't researching that as part of this ordinance. But for instance, if it's 6'8", let's just say your elevation is 5 feet, and you're in a AE 10 zone. That means you have to go up to 12 feet for your threshold. So you back out of that because it's about a foot structure at least below that. So you go down to 11. So that delta between 11 feet and your, what was I saying, your elevation was 5, you'd have 6 feet there. You wouldn't have 6 feet 8. So legally you couldn't mark it as parking. There are a lot of things you can do that create, barriers that are exactly the same, whether it's 6'8" or 6 feet, but, building code, you wouldn't be able to use that as a parking space. You could store stuff or whatever, but you couldn't use it as a parking space.
Well, I know especially in the west side, we're trying to, I think you have to, if you build something new, you have to park everything off site. You can't use the street. And if we've just told them that you're losing it's a foot difference here, where you could park underneath and make it compatible for them, and a foot difference isn't really going to make the difference in the height of the whole west side. I just want to make sure that we're not trapping ourselves. And once again, the person that's over here that really has to go up 8 feet gets to park underneath, but right across the street he can only go 5, and then it's a conundrum for him.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we're.
And I will say throughout the west side, there are a number of locations where I'm sure it's not 6 feet 8 that people are parking vehicles under their houses. I'm sure of.
Oh, yeah, but not
So-
for new, you're not gonna approve it though, for new construction.
They have not been approved, but they are new construction and how cars are getting parked under there. So, And it's all about really
Take that
barriers. Yeah.
Take that out with insurance, your insurance.
If it's legal or not, it floods out, see if they
I
pay
mean,
for it.
Christopher, would you consider not making, I mean, since this zoning is to give you guys flexibility, why would you even have to even note the FEMA and the city pre-board?
So the staff feeling was that if we start giving a foot there, that then it becomes 2 feet or 3 feet, or somebody comes in and, that we don't hold to that FEMA plus 2 foot freeboard line, that it's just like the rezoning itself from going to 2.5 to 3 stories.
Yeah.
It's incremental creep, and it immediately will have people seeking variances and things like that. And that's why we can't be here tonight, but we felt very adamant that we had to keep to that FEMA line.
Yeah, I just wanted to have that discussion.
I hear you.
You know, because it creates a conundrum if we're trying to keep the cars from parking on the street.
And this was not a thing that was gonna fix everything.
Yeah.
Right.
And it was an effort to try to fix it and also give an opportunity for people who are building new houses to use some of that space underneath it in the same way that people who are elevating existing houses can.
And I
That's all.
think staff has heard us last time and said we had some concerns and tried to tweak it a little bit.
Well, I talked to Lee about that, and that's where Lee was like, we gotta keep it at the FEMA line, so.
So I'm gonna go ahead and make a motion to approve this. I think staff tried to accommodate some of this, and we'll try to hear what other members of this commission have to say.
What I was thinking more about the issue of people trying to raise houses and less about the new, because someone has an existing house that's not raised, they're not parking under it now. And so I wasn't trying to solve the parking problem, I was just trying to solve the raise the house problem. And so, maybe there's a better mousetrap in the future, but I'll second it and support it.
I will say this, the only time, I think with this particular issue, it has only come up in West Side. I remember when it happened over there off of Andrew Gould was doing a project over on, I don't think might have been, it's in Noonan maybe? It was one of those.
I think it was Noonan.
Noonan Street, this came, I think we actually amended the ordinance because that particular
That one
issue.
lot, because it is deed restricted lot for affordable housing that
Right.
wasn't in that one location, yes.
And then of course we've got this, we have the issue on Fishburne and Ashley Avenue. But it seems, because West Side is just the way where it's
It may keep
located.
coming up over there.
It's just, I think it solves some of that issue. I don't think it's a blanket solution, but it's really over here is where I see it the most.
Any other questions, comments?
Well, I think that we had the issue with fire instead of, that we discussed with the freeboard, and how unfair it was that for some people that had a fire, that, had to raise it another additional foot. And I think that's the same, challenge that we have here. But you're right, I don't know that it's been anywhere else but the West. Do you remember if it's been anywhere else?
I don't know the new construction setup as well in the east side. I don't think, because east side has 2.5 story, and then Wagner Terrace has it also, the 2.5 story height limit, and I don't see it happening a lot in Wagner Terrace. I do think West Side's been more prevalent, yeah.
I think it's just
We're gonna
it's
have
low.
more
I think it's for the
problems in the
bold.
future too.
Well, I just wanted to put that on the record because of the building code discussion, and I believe that we need to do this. I'm going to vote for the motion, and we're getting ready to rewrite our zoning code anyway, so I think this is a stopgap measure for
Right.
people to continue working and respect the neighborhood until we can holistically look at it.
All right, please staff looking at that. So there's a motion, I made a motion, second by Mr. Bailey. All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? That's 6 in favor, none opposed. I was asked Ms. Lampus, you still have a quorum if I walk. But Ms. Lampus has many years of experience running these meetings. Would you read these last items, the zonings?
Well, where are you
And I hate
going, Chairman?
I'm gonna meet somebody for dinner. I didn't think it'd be this late, so,
Seriously, you
so
did?
sorry.
You look at that agenda and
You said 150
You had
things.
delusions.
You're delusional.
Say it
I
again?
said it
You were
back in
delusional.
No, no, I,
Agenda.
but,
Yes,
so, Ms. Lampus will do that. I greatly appreciate it. And, I think
Have
they
a
said
nice
the minutes,
time.
no, well.
Can you pick my son up
Can we
at
do this
Cotillion?
all?
Somebody's buying, somebody else is buying,
Okay,
so that's.
so can we, I'll make a motion.
I know how to.
Oh, do we, I guess we got
Yeah,
it.
no, I was getting ready to say that,
I think they're,
can't we take any of these rezonings together?
I will be able to fly through them, trust me.
Okay.
If y'all wanna do
Okay,
motions
item number
quickly,
one,
okay.
and it doesn't appear that anybody's here, so for the record, I'm gonna, it is printed on the record, so I'm not gonna talk.
I don't know if he's here from.
I was here from Southwick, I'm just listening.
Oh, okay, okay.
You're the one that had the comments both ways, so.
I didn't speak.
You didn't speak.
Oh, you didn't speak, okay. So anyways, 17
Okay, so
Lindendale.
17 Lindendale in West Ashley. It's a third of an acre lot. It was R4 in Charleston County, it would come in the city as SR1.
Okay, nobody here to speak in favor, nobody here to speak against, all
I
those.
move for approval.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, those, Mr. Bailey and Ms. Joyce, and all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? No,
Okay.
the ayes have it.
All right. And 1239 Wisteria Road, it's 0.13 acre. It's would go to SR2. It was R4 in Charleston County, but based on its lot size, it works better in the city as SR2, and that's what we also have in the surrounding neighborhood.
Thank you, Christopher. Anybody here to speak in favor? Anybody here to speak against? All those in favor, is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Ms. Bailey.
I'll second.
We have a repeat, Ms. Joyce. All those in favor state aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it.
And we have in Fairfield Pines, 1509 Gardenia Road. It's almost a half acre lot. It was R4 in the county, and this again would be SR2 because of the character of the surrounding neighborhood in the city designation.
Okay, it is R4 to SR2. Is anybody here? Nope. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a
Yes, so
motion.
moved. Go ahead.
Okay, Ms. Harrison, moves for approval. Is there a second? Mr. Bailey seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the ayes have it. And then 1624 Rocky Drive.
This is also in West Ashley. It is a 0.17 hundredths of an acre lot. It was R4 in the county, and it would come in as SR1 in this location based on the surrounding zoning in the city.
Okay, dokie. There's nobody here for any kind of opinion, so do I have a,
I'll make a motion to approve.
Ms. Jacobs moves for approval. Is there a second?
I will second.
Ms. Joyce seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the ayes have it.
And we've
2040 Coker Avenue.
Okay. And this one is, it is a quarter of an acre lot. It is a request for SR1. It was R4 in Charleston County, and typically in this neighborhood, the parcels we bring in are SR1.
Okay, there's nobody to speak in favor or opposition, so do I have a motion?
Motion for approval.
Allison moves for approval, Ms. Jacobs seconds it. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, the ayes have it. 628 Rosedale Drive.
And we've got, yes. And this is a parcel that was in the city for a while and inadvertently had not been zoned. It's been in the city about 8 years, and it was brought to our attention, so we are fixing that readily.
Have they been paying taxes anywhere?
They pay taxes. They just weren't
Okay,
zoned.
just curious.
Yeah, they pay taxes, but they just weren't zoned.
Ouch.
Can we make note, on the agenda, it doesn't actually say the owner's name on our agenda item?
Yeah, we'll add that when it goes to city council. Don't know why
I
that's
think
not
we
on.
already added that on our city council agenda, I can double check. Saw these earlier.
It's already had a first read at council too.
Okay.
So, yeah. So, yes. So, this would be SR1. It was R4 in Charleston County, and this is an area where we bring things in as SR1.
Okay, there's nobody here to voice opposition, so
I'll
is
make a
there,
motion to approve.
is there a move for approval?
Second. She's already made the
Jacobs?
motion,
Okay,
so I'm
I'm
seconding
sorry, I
it.
didn't hear you. It was moved for approval by Ms. Jacobs and then seconded by Ms. Harrison. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. Is that fast enough?
PPA, I guess, we got updates.
Well, Robert pretty much handled all those, but yeah, we are looking somewhere in November, December to set something for a special kind of meeting. It would be a special PC meeting, not a voting meeting, but to meet with the port and their consultants on Union Pier and have some give and take on that. And the public, of course, would be able to come to that meeting and remote location, possibly like at the passenger terminal or something like that, where they can show us lots of images and show us a little bit about the site too.
If you can make the October 27th meeting, there's a lot to take in with what they're presenting. I've been to 2 of them, and they have a lot of nice displays. So I would, if you can, it would be a really good thing to do. And I don't want to hold us up anymore because time is my discussion. After the meeting last month, and this one, I've sort of respectfully asked our chairman for us to have a discussion at some point about what I'm going to call time structure for our meetings. I believe that we need to figure out a methodology so that we don't go long and then we start cutting people off at the end. And I don't want to say the word limit because I don't want to feel anybody limited in their ability to talk. But I think we need a policy that just states what the structure is. I'll give you one example that the design review board uses. They give a set period of time to the applicant to present. Then the public has exactly that much time for that application, and they can choose how they want to give it. And then the applicant has a shorter period of time to respond to it. So everybody knows from the beginning how much time is given to each of the agenda items. We don't have to follow that model, but I'm just putting it on the table as something that we could consider. Because what I notice happens is people get up here and get real passionate, and then they repeat and repeat and repeat, and there's no way to politely say we're done. And it's also not fair to them. It's also not fair to the people that were sitting here for this item to sit through maybe 2 hours of public comments where things have been repeated. So to respect everybody's time on the agenda, even the last person sitting here, there should be some kind of structure that everybody knows under which we're handling public comment for each agenda item.
We've actually in the past have limited to 2 minutes or depending on, it wasn't anything that was written, Yeah, but we have, and I know that we've all talked about this has been the most comments, but I could tell you, in my time here, there's been several meetings in the past.
Public, absolutely. What I was.
But we just started doing public comments.
Yeah, the online comments.
Right,
So
and that only came with
online
COVID.
comments since COVID.
Right.
So, but
I can tell you,
Yes,
we
but
have had a lot of.
I thought Charlie just given a little bit of coaching before the comments on the first app, I thought it helped because I did think that people didn't do as much repeating of the same thing over and
I
over.
think we need a
it
formality
I think
because
it
it's not
definitely
fair.
helped, but I think that we could decide on a time limit that we give, and really, it really depends on the opposition. And then repeating it and everybody get emotional, and maybe, I don't know that we can do it on one meeting and not carry it over to
I
another.
think we need a policy. Is that appropriate to write a statement in our policy that there's a structure?
we should. We have rules of procedure, I believe, for PC. So it could be in
Is it
addition to
possible
those.
for staff to draft something that we can look at,
We could certainly look. We could work on
You
that.
don't have anything else to do you?
Yes, this is not complicated.
I mean, I'm willing to help with it because I just feel like, I know the last meeting that we had, there was so much occupation of time on one end that by the time we got to another raucous agenda item, people were getting cut off with their comments and everybody's repeating themselves, and those people have had to sit through it. And it's not fair to anybody. It's not fair to staff or us or the people that have sat here for 3 hours to wait to comment on their agenda item because we didn't control the commenting on a very powerful agenda item that we needed to hear everybody.
Well, we have an issue because they feel like they have the opportunity to speak to us, and they don't have that opportunity in any other forum for the most part, other than the 20 seconds you get at council and before any item is presented.
Well, it used to be at council public hearings, if you spoke at a public hearing, there was no time limit. Now it's 2 minutes.
Yeah.
It used to be it was unlimited,
Well, and it's also when the item is presented everything's done ahead of time, so you really don't know which item they're speaking for, unfortunately. 'cause
Well, no,
it's
that's
just-
citizens' participation. That's different than public hearing.
Right, no, I
Yeah, the
understand.
public hearing has gone to a time limit at city council where it was not before. So even city council's trying to recognize the respecting of everybody's time. And we can give them generous time limits. I just think we need a structure that's not arbitrary and respectful of everybody on the agenda.
Well, I think that there were, in my opinion, I don't know if y'all noticed, this, there are a lot more people spoke than raised their hands. Did y'all?
Yes.
I mean,
Yes,
it
yes,
appeared
yeah.
that way to me anyway, so.
So they did, they decided at the end that their point wasn't made. But if they know they need to make a point in 2 minutes, which is plenty of time, because I comment at a lot of boards, and if you write your comments out, 2 minutes is a generous plenty of time.
And then you don't have somebody that did a few things tonight that like wanted to just continue to hear themselves talking.
Just have organized thoughts when you're forced to, do it within a time constraint. You sort of maybe go through it one time.
I think for all fairness to everybody, the first person on the agenda and the last person on the agenda, there needs to be a simple policy, whatever it is, that we institute to respect everybody's
Yeah,
time.
I know. I think before I left BAR, they started saying we expect you to probably present at like 5:15 or 5:45, just not based upon any like 5-10 minutes per person, but it was just on the length and the breadth of the application, what they were setting kind of there, so that people's expectations are set, as opposed to
Kinda what Dominic
so-
said.
yeah. So maybe it's on a agenda basis, but that will give you a kind of a time frame to show up. But
We'll work up a little draft of something that y'all can discuss at your next meeting.
So public comments are gonna stay, that was one of my questions was, y'all gonna stick around for this since it started at COVID?
Yes, because it's a pretty easy thing for us to manage,
It
and
is,
gives
okay.
people another opportunity. We have a small meeting room here and the stuff that people get here at these times, so yeah, those are gonna stay.
Okay, good, I mean, I think it's
one,
great.
I didn't. One last thing is that I've been mulling this over multiple times, and I think I may have mentioned it to you a year or two ago, which is I think it would be good for us as a board to start trying to do our continuing ed, even though I don't have to do it, and I would like to do that, and I think as a board so that we're all learning from the same page, and I don't know how we need to request that because I know some of these things are a fee is required. I don't know if it's us joining like as ancillary members of I guess American College Planners, whatever that the acronym. Yeah, if we need to do that, but I think at least for us to get our hours, because I do know that y'all are concerned about that probably, but more so we know with Facebook, FOIA, all of those elements, people are it's now a new part of our world, which is that's a question that's always going to be asked. And I think if we are all learning from the same page, especially because we're going to do this rewrite, that we have the same education and we have the same talking points.
Well, and I sent to all the commissioners the one, I attended all 3 series of the urban forestry. That's totally focused at planners and planning staff. In fact, I see our staff on those, on that list.
Jim sent you all, were those
Jim just
online?
sent us one recently.
Yeah, so we can definitely get you all into those, no problem.
Do we have to sign up for them, or can we just show up? Okay.
So, right, we're not required, but I guess like we say that we're going to do it all together, we need to just do it.
I'm happy, I've already got my hours, but I'm happy to attend because I attend everything that is sent my way just because I learned something.
Right.
Yeah, it can only
I
help.
think what's most important about this aspect is we are required to educate ourselves, and I would love to be able to bring some of those educatable items that we learn to the process. And sometimes that's been a little, we're stuck in how we do things. And I even heard some of that a little bit tonight where, we only want single-family residential, and that's why I took the time to explain what missing middle is. And I didn't want to tell people, go look at one of the oldest neighborhoods West Ashley is Old Windermere, and it's full of duplexes and townhomes. They're 2 and 3 stories, big palatial homes, ADUs. It's a whole missing middle, and nobody sees that neighborhood as anything but an old, beautiful neighborhood, and it's full of missing middle. Even right down South Windermere Boulevard are all those duplexes and fourplexes, and nobody sees any of that as bad.
Wagner Terrace too.
Yeah.
Over half the units in Wagner Terrace are not single-family units, and yet people think of it as a single-family
Family
neighborhood.
residential neighborhood, exactly. And Burns Down's tiniest little lots in the whole world, crowded area. People were talking about parking or whizzing through neighborhoods, I can relate, full of ADUs now, and some short-term rental situations. I mean, that's the kind of housing we need, but people are fearful of it because we haven't spent any time educating them as to.
They don't even know they can do it.
There's a great video, if you go find it, called Guess the Density. You'll get every one of them wrong. And we should show that at the beginning of every meeting to educate our public as to they have a misperception of what single-family residential and high density means. They see single house on 9,000 acres, or they see 5-story apartments, and they don't see that missing middle.
Nobody saw 128 units under SR1. Lots. I mean, we say units, they mean lots. I mean, none of them saw that 128 that it could have. And I believe the reason they didn't do a PUD is because it's just too expensive. It's not a huge property, and it's a disjointed property.
And I understand that, but what we were trying to make the point is we can't bind him by zoning for all the good faith things he's saying.
He promises. He could sell it to
Based on what
somebody.
I've seen them do, I think they will do what they say. But zoning, the only promise of zoning is in what's stated in the zoning. All those other things that he's promising are just
fluff,
are just air to this.
Well, they could bring to you a conservation easement draft.
Yeah.
And that's
Of
that.
those wetland areas.
Honestly, that's what I was thinking. I mean,
And
even
maybe if y'all have a
we could do
discussion with
cluster.
them, that's.
They've had some discussions, but they didn't bring it up tonight.
Well, maybe
But
maybe
Maybe
that's
by
something.
virtue of the deferral, they'll bring
And
it
I
up
wanted
next
to
time.
ask, I didn't want to throw a ringer into it. Did they not look at with y'all with our new conservation zoning as opposed to that cluster,
Yeah,
old
it
cluster?
would be tough there.
Okay.
And the DR6 worked better
Okay.
for what the kind of product they were doing, so.
I think they would make everybody very happy if they would formally put some of that land in conservation. And they
I
could
think
do-
they would make everyone very happy, but they would make enough people probably.
And one of the things is that they've got a lot of highland there that they aren't gonna build on, which they really get some credits for that. You know, I think the write-off on the wetland probably isn't very great, but the write-off on the highland that they've got there probably is pretty good.
And in our world today, they're not, everybody says, oh, they're gonna fill those wetlands once they get their zoning. They can't. It's an
Right.
absolute hard no.
They don't
It's a
hear that.
hard
They
no.
don't hear that.
Yeah. Now, one last question, this will be my last question.
I move to adjourn.
Didn't
He's gotta get his voice.
you say,
Or can't sit down.
didn't you say there
He's in his
was
tongue
another
test.
road, like when we did the PUD for Tattooed Moose?
Yeah.
That there's another connective road that's
Yes.
running in there?
Yes.
Okay, that wasn't mentioned, and I
Well,
think,
it doesn't connect to that side.
I know,
it's
but they're
further-
working on piecing it down the road, aren't they?
Yeah, well, yeah, we
Okay.
require that. So everything that gets built through there is doing something, but that's on the other side of the wetlands from them. So,
Okay.
How about a stop?
So I guess,
we desperately.
what would we need to do in order?
Poor McKenna's child is probably starving.
What would we need to do in order to like either I guess like be an affiliate member of that, or at least to say like how would you, what would you recommend us doing for like doing our education together
I don't know
jointly?
that being a member of staff will get you necessarily any more opportunities that
No.
you wouldn't get whether you are or aren't a member. They're open
Right.
to everybody. So, you know, I think we can just keep working to try to give you all opportunities like the ones that Jim just sent you, that you all could attend together here in our office.
If you all come up with a list of topics, we can always research and see,
Yes.
see if there are, easy ways for us to follow.
Yes.
Okay.
But the easiest way, those ones that I sent out,
Right.
You can just show up.
Right.
You don't have to sign up or anything.
Right.
But if there's specific stuff you all want to see, I'd be happy to do some research and try to find something.
Would that also, would we have to do like the public hearing notice that we're gonna be attending something together, or would it just, or
Mr. the quorum, would that be constituted as quorum if we're together? Yeah, I think it actually would.
But I don't think a quorum matters if we're not making a vote on anything.
I gotta find that.
It's still constituted as a meeting and you have to.
Yeah.
I think it is public.
Yeah, gotta find out.
I'm coming in with my Halloween now.
But if we're saying, if it's not, if we're just doing, if it's not, we're meeting together, but we all are saying on this date. Because then you're not like going to a conference.
Let us talk about it.
Right. The only reason why I'm saying is that at least we all have the same information at the same time and can talk about it.
You could do the same and do four commission members and then four commission members.
Charlie does a good job.
And that could be the exact same.
Right.
Right.
Right. But at least everybody's, now that we're doing this whole new zoning ordinance, I think it would be good for us to like.
Oh, it's official.
Yeah, I know.
I adjourned.
Bailey moved to.
I'm adjourned.
She's attorney now.
Yeah, yeah.
I got mine at the beginning.
Excuse me, I didn't get mine.
No, because I've left here. I've left here a couple of times without it, and I had to beg my way out.
Oh, I had to pay every time I went.
No, you push the button and you tell them I'm a planning commissioner. I was at the meeting.
I never have done that. Okay, thank you.
No, I refuse. No, I'm not going to.
Next time I'll try to remember who needs one and just put it on your desk. When you guys get there.
Yeah, usually. It was huge. Yeah, it's exciting.
Well, when I told Chase about looking at the shark, he was basically like,
Oh, yeah.
he said he's from Chicago.
Today the garage is closed for us.
You know, the problem with that, like I wish I had said this, because I do think we would need that kind of density. It just, I agree with, I think it's Mr. Bellows, it's like not in the right spot for that part of town. If it were east of 26, it'd be great.
They finally figured that out.
But it's just
That's
that.
what I'm worried about. And all those land use maps we did, I saw all these inconsistencies that I want to point out. Everybody's like,
It's just a